to look in the mirror, America. Do you like what you see?
I keep referring to Obama as the magic Negro.
Do you like what you see now?
Well, suck on this.
It's just a mirror, America.
Shared sacrifice by everybody.
What could it do to you except reflect your image?
I did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport.
The Majority Report.
Far more credible to me than PBS and Frontline.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, December 7th, 2017. My name is Michael Brooks, and I'm Michael Thursday pinch hitting for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, Eric Levitz of New York Magazine. We're talking about the social consequences of the GOP's tax monstrosity, the potential coming GOP civil war over their plans for redistribution to the wealthy and a tax on the non-wealthy. Plus, who might replace Al Franken in the Senate if he does, in fact, resign. And, of course, MSNBC. They have gotten a spinal transplant and rehired Sam Seder. Shofar. That is a sign of mitzvah from our people, and also very upsetting to the types of characters that would try to get Sam off of MSNBC. But don't worry, the Cernovich documentary project continues. Thank you, Mike, for priming the interest.
With renewed vigor.
And helping get together the seed funding for exposing you. Donald Trump has unleashed a new crisis in the Middle East by recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. There is protests, rage in the Palestinian-occupied territories, and many right-wing pundits are using this as a good time to trot out one of the last acceptable forms of just kind of rank, stupid bigotry in America, which is, of course, those aimed at Arabs. We will talk about that and worldwide reaction to it, plus new figures on wealth concentration in America. Not good. Time magazine names the Me Too movement as its Person of the Year. Mike Flynn, not looking great for that dude. But maybe some of the policies that he was offering Russia weren't necessarily bad, but how he was doing it is a major problem. Plus, the Pentagon confirms that there are approximately 2,000 U.S. troops on the ground in Syria. Just a little side project. And the corporate tax cut in the tax bill could affect the GOP hunt for votes. We'll get back to that with Eric. All that and more on today's Majority Report. If you're new to the program, we're going to do a little round robin here. My name is Michael Brooks. I'm a co-host on the show. I usually host the show about once a week. You will hear me, occasionally see me in a split screen the rest of the days of the week, co-hosting, co-anchoring it with Sam, doing impressions, politics, hopefully adding to the commentary, and then we'll just go around. To the left, we have Matt Leck.
Hello.
Producer extraordinaire, Jamie Peck.
Hey.
She is a contributor, on-air presence and personality, as everybody is here, in fact, and producer as well. She's also a writer. You can check her writing out in many places, including The Guardian and Paste and elsewhere. And then we have the great Brendan Finn, researcher, producer, writer.
Sorry, my name doesn't rhyme with Peck and Leck.
Peck-Leck. The Peck-Leck duo. So just to let everybody know who we are. Let's get to a very fun piece of sound that occurred on Fox News Was this from last night? So what's been amazing about the kind of rise of Trump and the alt-right and all of these narratives about things like the deep state and all of a sudden this deep concern from people with very hard far-right extremist politics with things like FBI abuses and the military-industrial complex. It's been fascinating to watch them collect the terms and concern about those issue areas and then apply it to their own bizarre conspiracy matrix in an effort to defend a incredibly out of control and just insane White House. And there was a real standout moment of that with a guy named Greg Jarrett, who was sort of like the C-team Sean Hannity, except he's sitting across from Sean Hannity. This is the amazing thing about Fox is they have so much resources that they hire they're like, let's just get the D-list version of our main anchors too. Just throw them on air. So this is like almost Sean and Greg looking at reflections of each other. I didn't really know Greg. I hadn't really heard from Greg Jarrett before, but here he is going deep on the FBI. And I have some curiosity about, after this rant, what future journalism we can expect from Greg Jarrett.
I think we now know that the Mueller investigation is illegitimate and corrupt. And Mueller has been using the FBI as a political weapon. And the FBI has become America's secret police, secret surveillance, wiretapping, intimidation, harassment, and threats. It's like the old KGB that comes for you in the dark of the night, banging through your door.
But this is not a game. This is not hyperbole you're using here.
No, ask Paul Manafort. They came for him and broke through his front door.
And if it can happen to him, Greg,
it can happen to all of us. Absolutely. The FBI is a shadow government now. It has become highly politicized. Peter Strzok.
I'm really looking forward to Greg Hampton's future reporting on Greg Jarrett's future reporting on Fred Hampton and COINTELPRO and the FBI's war on civil rights leaders, its behavior around Leonard Peltier and Native American activists, its infiltration of environmental groups, its abuse of the civil liberties and human rights of pretty much any actual left movement that you can imagine in the entirety of modern American history since the thing was formed by J. Edgar Hoover, who is really one of the most demented and dangerous figures in all of American life. I would actually say that when the FBI is poking around a plutocrat, global mega lobbyist, scumbag political consultant with ties not only to oligarchs, but past campaign work for everybody from Donald Trump to every type of crooked corporation you could imagine in the 80s, to the Pakistani intelligence services, to Joseph Zavimbi and the UNITA rebels while they were burying people alive in Angola. That's Paul Manafort's record. I think if the FBI wants to kick in his front door, I'm down. But if we want to talk about a history of abuses of the FBI targeting all sorts of people that Fox News demonizes on a regular basis, I'd be up for it. Balls in your court, buddy. Greg Jarrett, truth crusader against the abusive overreaches of the FBI. We're in a new world.
Most interesting thing about Greg Jarrett that I've found so far, Matt, this might be of interest of you, being from the upper Midwest, is that he was arrested for intoxication at the airport there. And
in Bismarck?
In the Midwest?
Wait, which
where?
Airport? There's more than one airport in the Midwest.
Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
I love that. That was so tri-state of Brendan. He was just like, he was arrested at the Midwest airport.
You know that one there.
You know, the one that's out there. You know, the bullshit part of the country. You know what I'm saying?
That was that New Yorker cover. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We are playing our exact roles here on the show. No, I think, but I mean, look, I'm glad Greg Jarrett's back on his feet and that wasn't a career ender. Of course, we all wish him a speedy and apparently he's doing really well. He looks like he's great. He was out there swinging, really upset about Paul Manafort. That would be an amazing character if Jarrett legitimately got into it. So and just to let everybody know, Sam will be back tomorrow. He obviously needs to take a little bit of a rest. There's all sorts of places.
That was overdue.
That was very overdue. He was getting very, very enervated. I was thinking about and I hope that Mike Cernovich is watching. And one of the things that's been most gratifying to this, because also Sebastian Gorka, who was that sort of just ludicrous Vichy Wren, living the American dream, pseudo-terrorism expert, hyperpower moron. It's
Vitesse Rend, get it right.
Oh, excuse me, Vitesse Rend. That was the group with some really interesting perspectives on who should have won World War II that he was affiliated with.
He wore the pin to the inauguration.
Wore the pin. Yeah, well, you got to rep. Fascism recognize fascism. Clown fascism recognize clown fascism. But he tweeted this out about Sam when Cernovich was drumming up this nonsense. And I think part of the lesson that we take from it is that these idiots have been actually watching us do our routines.
Right in your head.
And that is very gratifying. I really hope that Gorka, specifically, I hope everybody could, if you'll really indulge me here, I did a video where we reviewed part of Dr. Gorka's thesis, quote unquote, where he got his PhD. From what was this school? It was like the Donald Trump Institute for International and Strategic Affairs or something.
It's like the online University of Bucharest.
It was like the online university, something like that. And he had he had a graph that was so stupid that I actually, in a moment of deep humility, was like, "Am I too dumb to get this?" Yes. So I hope they're all tuning in. And Mike, don't worry. Forward and onward with the documentary as well. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, this has been with Sam, but this is a community here, and we all work on this, and we've all kind of gone through this together. So nothing but appreciation for everybody. I mean, from this incredible community of supporters we have. I was talking about the other night on my show about really how, ultimately part of the reason that even if things had not worked out this well, and even if MSNBC had not done the right thing and things kind of, there was some measure of actual reality restored to this situation, we could still go after these people and be honest and be aggressive and have unapologetic, serious left politics because we're supported by you, financially and otherwise. And people came out, and then, of course, tons of, just too numerous to mention of people that were, I know friends of Sam and lots of kind of high profile and community people. It's incredibly honoring and gratifying, and we're just going to redouble our efforts and keep exposing. For people new to Cernovich, that is an impression of him, which I will be. You thought I did these impressions often before. Okay, everybody.
Oh, by the way, just one more note. If we do a Gorka video and you enjoy it on YouTube, just put that in as replies.
Yes, please. All replies of this content, you can just bombard it with all of these morons. There's a synchronized thing where obviously this country under Republican leadership and this country under corporate and plutocratic dominance, we have to be very, very serious about reversing mass oppression and equality of every shape and form, both nationally and internationally. And that's a goal of this show. And we're actually quite sort of, we're sincere about it. And these people, the Cernoviches, the Gorkas, the Trumps, the Trump Juniors, the whoever, every day we need to make them objects of disdain, ridicule, and buffoonery, because the threat they pose is serious, but nothing else about them is. And we are going to continue. We will be right back on the Majority Report with Eric Levitz.
Time after time, I've done my sentence, but committed no crime. mistakes. I've made a few. I've had my shadows and kicks in my face, but I've come through. And I need to go on, 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 on. We are the champions, my friends, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions of the I've taken my bows and my curtain calls. You brought me fame and fortune and everything that goes with it. I thank you all, but it's been no bed of roses, no pleasure cruise. I consider it a challenge before the whole human race.
We're having fun here. Welcome back to the Majority Report. I'm Michael Brooks. Joining us now is Eric Levitz. He's a staff writer for New York Magazine. Eric, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Today is very fun. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, it seems like you guys kind of got a best all-world situation out of this.
Yeah, I mean, the thing it reminded me of is when, and my dad actually had me stop doing this appropriately, but when I was like 6, 7 years old and he would take me out to play tennis before it got, a little bit more serious, what I would do, I could play, right? I had some ability to play, and I would watch like the Grand Slams and everything. And so what I would do is I would basically like script out the match, right? Like we do like a couple minutes, or like, all right, like it's 15-40, you're ahead of me. It's the final, the French Open. You had 2 match points now. And now I'm going to come back and I'm going to win every single point for like the rest of the set or something. And he'd be like, all right, sure, fine, And then he would like, pretend that I was, hitting all these winners, and he would be in the net and pretend to throw his racket and all this stuff. And I was like, I've not seen anything in my life that has actually as closely reflected the rigged tennis matches of a 6-year-old me as what just happened over the last 6 days. It was just like free press, check. Exposure of a alt-right troll in a total Andres Escobar own goal fashion, check. And then ultimately, of course, finally some actual spine and sanity on the part of MSNBC. But I mean, this has bigger implications for all of us. I mean, not just journalists, but really, in fact, I mean, the institution of a press, if this was going to be the game, continue to be the game, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cernovich was very open about the fact that he was pleased that this formula had paid off so well, and that he planned to replicate it over and over with any prominent liberal commentators that happen to have tweets that could be misinterpreted if you really decide that you just don't understand the concept of irony.
Right.
And I think also it's just good to see MSNBC's core viewership actually like exerting a little bit of influence over that network.
Definitely.
Which has, since Andy Lack took the reins, and even after Trump won, despite the fact that there's this clear, large and intense audience for, progressive political content, has really decided that the Santa is White lady should be a marquee presence at the network, and brought on Hugh Hewitt and all these other whatever. So, yeah, it's just good to see that there is a limit to how much they can move the goalposts right at that network.
Absolutely. And also a limit to on them, sort of getting back, and I guess, just kind of having a basic assessment of the, situation, and, obviously, credit to them for doing the right thing here finally. Let's talk briefly. I mean, I don't know if it's confirmed yet. As of the show, it might be, but Al Franken is expected to resign. I'm not really interested in going. He's done. Yeah. So I guess he's resigned. I'm not really interested in going and sort of relitigating all of it. I think, the next thing is really honestly just the politics of who replaces him, how it's done. I have a Keith Ellison bias, but I know there's a lot of other names in the mix, obviously. You have some reporting on this. Who do you think is going to be replacing Al Franken and why?
Yeah, so this is all pretty preliminary, and I think it's mainly, I believe everybody's going off this scoop from Politico, so nothing set in stone. But the picture that's emerging right now is that the female lieutenant governor of Minnesota, Tina Smith, is the favorite, and the idea here is that she has already signaled, she already passed up running to replace the Democratic governor of Minnesota, Mark Dayton, earlier this year. And she basically said that she's not really long for politics. She kind of wants to finish up her run and go back to private life. And this makes her an ideal candidate for Dayton because, at least in this reporting, he isn't comfortable. There's like a lot of strong candidates on the bench for Democrats in Minnesota. The party's really divided, especially after the Bernie-Hillary race. And he doesn't want to put his thumb on the scales and pick one side of the party versus the other. And so his thinking is, I'll appoint somebody who will not run so basically he appoints somebody for a year in November 2018. They have to actually try to get elected to the seat. Mm-hmm. If he was picking somebody who was really interested in retaining it, they would have the power of incumbency. Mm-hmm. That would essentially make them shoe in for the Democratic nomination and give them a better chance of beating the Republican. But Dayton, in order to avoid inter-party conflict, he's appointing someone who he thinks will just bow out, and then there can be an open Democratic primary where Democratic voters will be able to decide who they want to be Franken's replacement.
Yeah, I mean, but what are her politics like? I mean, the thing, Franken, I guess, if I'm blunt, I certainly have much more left politics than Franken, but he was, first, obviously, you're losing somebody who did have an ability to humiliate Republicans and was effective in framing certain issues, and that's important. And in some sense, I think having somebody like an Ellison who could kind of come and do that out of the gate himself, there's a lot of value that probably would, supersede the sort of concerns that Dayton has. But that's understandable. But setting that aside, what are her politics like? Is she going to be as least as in the sort of, kind of genuine sort of center-left liberal mode as Franken? Is she maybe actually progressive, or is she more to the kind of Clinton wing?
Yeah, I am not a guru of Gopher State politics, and I'm not familiar with Smith's background. I know that she played a role in helping to rebuild the bridge there that collapsed in 2007, and that she's been a key ally to Dayton, the governor, since 2010. But
he's pretty liberal. He's a fairly liberal governor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think ultimately, if you take her at her word or take Politico at their word, if she's only going to be in there for a year, it's not going to matter very much. Joe Manchin has pretty much voted with Bernie Sanders on every legislative issue that's really come up this year. So, it's ultimately, it's a defensive mode where pretty much any replacement level Democrat is going to serve the function for the next year. Right. And also there's obviously, significance and value to having a woman taking that seat in light of everything happening as well. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So let's get now to, first of all, just more generally, you actually see some, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you think there might actually still be some hiccups in finalizing this tax bill as the Republicans go into conference. Now, and we should be clear, and you can elaborate on this, that again, even just sort of calling it a tax bill in some ways kind of minimizes. This really is this would structurally set in place the kind of next wave of deepening inequality and even affect austerity at a state level. So this is a major goal for Republican legislators and the people who fund them, but you still think they're going to potentially run into trouble here. If that's so, what's the dynamic behind that?
Yeah, I think almost certainly they're going to get this thing through. The fact that they've been willing to do so far to get these tax cuts to the point where they've gotten suggests that they're willing to do anything. Right. That said, the problem that they have is that their ruthlessness came back to bite them on the Senate bill because they were obsessed with trying to pass it last Friday, even though they had to massively rewrite it for a variety of reasons, and everyone saw the scribbles in the margins. They basically, what happened was they were initially planning to get rid of the corporate alternative minimum tax. So right now you've got the statutory top corporate rate that's 35%, and then you have all these deductions and tax credits. And basically the alternative minimum tax says, all right, no matter how many deductions you rack up, you can't go below 20%. You got to pay 20% of your profits, except, of course, for the profits that you stash overseas and that you don't pay anything on, which is a whole other part of this. Anyhow, so they take the alternative minimum tax out, they lower the top corporate rate to 20%, and then on Friday, McConnell promises Collins that he'll put in this $10,000 property deduction because they're getting rid of otherwise the SALT deduction, the state and local income tax deduction in high-income states. Collins wants to, preserve that upper middle class benefit, so he puts that back in. Ron Johnson is getting an extremely big tax break for the kind of businesses that his family owns. He owns a pass-through business, which is totally unjustifiably getting a giant tax cut, even though no economic theory says that giving a tax break to pass-through businesses is a good idea. But he wants an even bigger tax break.
Wait, what's his
they're
business?
offering
His family has a real. They don't own like some little boutique, right? I mean, it's a pretty large scale business that he's involved in, right?
I gotta look it up.
Yeah.
I thought it was, is it car dealership?
I think it's something like that. Yeah. Anyways, okay. Yeah, that's extraordinary.
Yeah. So he wants an even bigger present, and he was able to you got to actually respect Ron John, who's widely regarded as a very dumb man.
Yes.
But when he saw Corker and Flake holding up the bill because of deficit concerns, he latched on as the third. But he wasn't actually concerned about the deficit. He just wanted a larger tax break for his family, and was able to get that.
And in that sense, he is truly the quintessential Republican. Like, it's so embarrassing that the press even can still give a second to these people grandstanding about the deficit. But when a guy says, I will hold this up to literally personally net my family more income, that's who you should be listening to. That is the core of the Republican Party right there.
Oh, absolutely. So anyhow, so McConnell makes these concessions, and suddenly the tax bill gets way more expensive. They have this $1.5 trillion cap on how much it can cost because of the budget resolution they passed, complicated Senate rules. And so they need new revenue stat on Friday night if they're going to pass this by the end of the week, like McConnell has decided he has to for no particular reason. And so they decided, we'll put the corporate alternative minimum tax back into the bill. But they forgot to lower the corporate alternative minimum income tax. So now they have a statutory rate of 20%, the regular rate, and then you can collect as many deductions as you want, but you can't go below 20%. So they set the two rates at the exact same level, which means that almost all corporate deductions suddenly are now worthless. And it actually and it's a like $300 billion difference. They basically took $300 billion worth of tax cuts away from their corporate donors, and their corporate donors are pissed.
Right. So what are they going to do? This is the whole point of the tax cut, is give away to people like their corporate donors.
Right. And certain kinds of businesses, this will really nullify the benefit of the tax cut almost entirely. So that puts them in a position now where they have this bill that they actually, initially they were thinking, maybe we'll go to conference with the House, we'll reconcile the bill that the House passed and the bill that the Senate passed, but also we have a 3-vote margin in the Senate. We don't want to test that again, so if there's any trouble in conference, we'll just have the House pass what the Senate passed. Now, that's a very, very undesirable option. A lot of their corporate donors will flip out if they pass the Senate version through the House and make that the law, which means they got to go back to the Senate. I don't know if they actually had a crisis and had to choose between no tax cuts and doing the tax cut that eliminates corporate deductions, which ironically is actually what tax reform traditionally is lower the rates and get rid of deductions.
Right.
But the donors don't want that. I think they probably pass it anyway, but who knows? They've got a really undesirable situation here. And the other factor is that, it passed by 2 votes in the Senate. And Susan Collins said that she was only voting to repeal the individual mandate in Obamacare. which found its way into the tax bill, because McConnell promised her that as soon as she votes for this tax cut, Republicans will pass new funding shoring up Obamacare. They'll replace the subsidies that Trump canceled, and they'll establish this reinsurance program to lower premiums. And she said, so I'm not really like betraying you guys on health care, because I got these promises that
she
fix
should
the damage I'm
totally
about to vote
take
for.
that to the bank for sure.
Yeah. And House conservatives, Paul Ryan, are not willing to give Collins cover for another couple weeks. They're already saying, no, we're not going to do that. Or at least we're not promising to do that. We never promised to do that. McConnell can't tell you what we're going to do. And so Collins doesn't have a fig leaf anymore. Now she needs to vote to sabotage Obamacare without pretending that she knows that she's going to be able to fix it afterwards.
Right.
And there are people occupying Susan Collins' office today. She's under a lot of pressure. This tax bill is not getting more popular.
Right.
It's the least popular piece of tax legislation in modern American history, which is astounding because that means it's a tax cut that is less popular than any tax hike that's been passed in the last 4 decades. Which is unprecedented.
And people, I think it's so naked. I mean, it's like if you get to the analogy I always use is that, John McCain voted to give his trust fund baby daughter a gift of a untaxed estate. And if you're making 40 grand a year or 30 grand a year, you have to work harder and probably end up paying a bit more to subsidize that gift. I mean, that's really there's a lot more, not to mention even the things that, like, I know that the deduction for graduate students got taken out of the Senate version. I mean, but there has been, and the attack on Obamacare, which we already kind of went through. I mean, it's hard to hide the ball on what this is. And then when you even have like a meeting with Gary Cohn and a bunch of executives not even raising their hands to pretend that they're going to use this to reinvest in jobs, I mean, it becomes kind of hard.
And Republican lawmakers saying out loud, asked by the press, why are you pushing forward this? And saying, like, as their official line, the donors are going to, yes. I think Lindsey Graham and Congressman Chris Collins said, like, the financial contributions are going to dry up if we don't do this. The bill is an expression of the Republican Party's confidence that American democracy is no longer functional.
Right.
That is the bet that they are proudly making right now, is that we have, that sucker isn't getting up. We knocked the crap out of it, and it is not going to be able to stand back up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So, and I don't know. We'll see. I mean, right now, the problem is for Republicans, I'm really astounded by how much the public actually gets what this bill is about, given the disconnect generally between, what the Republican Party stands for and what the polls show the public thinking it stands for. Generally speaking, people did not catch on to just how plutocratic Trump would be previously. But I think it is that, there's a stereotype about Republicans, which is that they care about the rich more than anyone else. And generally, parties make an effort not to completely confirm the stereotype that the public has about them. So this has often unfortunate on the Democratic side because they kind of are really worried about being seen as the party that's soft on crime or, dovish on war or like for minorities. And so like they generally want bipartisan cover to like sort of do liberal things on those issues like criminal justice reform or whatever.
Right, like actual things that we urgently need to do. But on the other, I mean, comedically, the contrast would be if there was a Democratic convention in 2012 and Obama, I'll just pick as a random year, it was like, Obama was like, all right, we're going to have a group, we're going to pray to Mecca, then we're going to have a giant love-in with some people from the Stop War Coalition, and then we're going to deconstruct masculine identity. Third night of the DNC. This is essentially what the Republicans are doing. Where they're like, yes.
And then if asked about it, if Bernie Sanders was like, we got to do this or else the Nation of Islam will cut off their contributions.
If we don't do this, then the Black Panther shock troops won't stop white people from voting, and then we're doomed. This is literally what the Republicans are doing right now. And so you also, another important, and just I want to add throughout all this, I think it's incredibly bleak. I think that there's no doubt that this is all about calls that they're getting from their donors, and the donors are angry. And by the way, let's be real. There isn't a real internal conflict in the Republican Party. If these people fail the whole Bannon quote-unquote insurgency, then the plutocrats can just flip their money to those candidates, and we'll have another wave of an even, if it's even possible, another group of extremists that in primary people and get, they win primaries fueled off of the xenophobia and, whatever the conspiracy de jour is. And then they'll be in Congress with an even, sort of next level commitment to undermine democracy and redistribute wealth to the top. So there's no doubt what the Republican incentive structure is, but there still is definitely room here, as bleak as it is, to, light up phones and put a lot of pressure on these people, because I do think even for them, they're not used to how immensely unpopular this is. You could tell in the beginning of the process that they still did think, oh, now we're back in our comfort zone. Now we do our tax reform spiel, and everybody likes that, right? And it's, clearly reversing their faces. I just want to touch on another thing related to this tax cut, though. You have another piece that you put up recently called "After Tax Cuts for the Rich, Trump Hopes to Take Food Away from Poor Kids." And that's, of course, the plan. I mean, the plan is that these tax giveaways will blow up the deficit. They won't do anything to create jobs and steam the economy. We know that. And then what happens is after they do just like with Bush, they blow up the deficit. There aren't the results that are promised. Inequality's high, all the rest. And then we go back to, oh my God, spending's out of control. We need to attack Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. It's a very synchronized, holistic effort that they have in terms of these plans of wealth redistribution to the top. But I think there's something so just kind of primitive and basic and cruel about all of these plans. But, Medicare and Social Security are in incredible danger, always with Republicans and neoliberal Democrats. But they also affect a lot of people, and there is some muscle behind them. Poor kids don't have lobbyists scrolling legislation for Mitch McConnell. And if you really wanted to distill how fundamentally grotesque this is, I mean, this is a tax cut for lobbyists and people on television that will directly translate to literally taking food out of children's mouths. It doesn't get more grotesque than that.
Yeah, I mean, my argument is that I understand the concern from liberals about they're going to blow up the deficit and then push for these cuts, but I think that if you look, we have a pretty large, if you just look at the absolute number, you have a scary number deficit already.
Mm-hmm.
Adding 1.5 trillion to that over a decade, I don't think makes that big a difference. I think that
not in reality, but they'll use it.
I don't think the public cares about the deficit really.
No,
and I don't think there's any scenario where what the Republicans want to do is popular. So I think that ultimately, if they're going to push through these welfare reforms, it's going to be because it's just what they want to do, and not because there's any political logic to doing so, or because I think that they would do it even if they didn't pass the tax cut, if they actually have the will to do it.
Right.
But I think my argument with the attack on the poor is that less than making up for the debt that they're racking up fiscally with the tax bill is making up for this populist kind of debt. They kind of just betrayed their populist working class, middle class base in a really flagrant and obvious way, like we were just saying. And now it offers welfare reform, shifting the conversation to the parasitic poor, so-called or whatever, offers them
Quote,
an opportunity
unquote.
to remind their base that hey, remember which class you hate. You hate that social class below you that's taking your is sucking off the government teat. You're not mad at the social class above you that is sucking off their parents' inherited income and capital gains, and you hate the idle poor, not the idle rich. Remember,
right? No, I think that goes back to the '80s research on Reagan Democrats, and one of the things that always struck me that they found was that some of these people would basically say, "Look, we know that Republicans are going to screw us, and they're going to favor corporations, and they're going to harm our livelihoods, but," and they didn't say it this bluntly, maybe, but they were basically like, "But we're also really racist. And we know that Democrats are not truly populist or left enough to protect us from corporations, but they might do some stuff for poor people of color who we really hate. So at least with the Republicans, they'll punch down on those people." It's the same dynamic.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Trump gave a rally last week in Missouri where he said, does anyone want welfare reform? And he said, I know people that work 3 jobs and they live next to somebody who doesn't work at all. The person who is not working at all and has no intention of working at all is making more money and doing better than the person that's working his or her ass off. So he's really trying to cultivate this class resentment that's downward looking. And I think the real tell is this is about stigmatizing the poor and like stirring up hatred for the poor as opposed to actually saving money. I mean, first of all, is that our country doesn't spend enough money on poor people to like actually get deficit savings there, like because we just don't spend that much money on them.
Right, of course.
But the second one is that like they're trying to facilitate Scott Walker's plan to drug test food stamp recipients. And many states have tried this already, and actually costs more money to administer these tests that humiliate food stamp recipients than you save by like denying food to the children of women who have smoked marijuana in the last month.
Right.
I mean, it's unconscionable morally and as a policy, but also it makes no sense even if your concern is just saving money. It's about stigmatizing the poor.
Right. It's an attack, but I do think though that I think big picture and what really drives it in terms of the politics of the base, you're absolutely right. But I do think that we can never forget, and this just goes back to, I guess, my kind of formative political experiences of, the 2010, 2011 of, Obama's willingness to move far to the right in terms of cuts on Medicare and Social Security. We're in this massive Wall Street fueled economic crisis, but somehow we're talking about austerity, which is the exact opposite of what will renew the economy. And the reason I point this out is I do think, and the dynamics of the Democratic Party are very different. So you will see it's going to be very different, like it was several years ago. Democratic leaders could come out and call for austerity and cuts. Now it's much more tricky for them to do so. But you will absolutely see the kind of quote-unquote centrist, quote-unquote responsible people world, which is totally discredited. They're going to come out and they're going to do the, high-minded deficit nonsense version of why we need to do these cruel counterproductive policies and structural attacks on Medicare and Social Security. That is going to come, and that's going to be, the part of the attack that tries to appeal to, an incredibly small demographic of quote-unquote middle voters, but one that is, pretty affluent and has totally disproportionate influence in conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that 2 things. One, I think that the Republican dream is making a Democratic president sign cuts to Social Security and Medicare. That's what they want. They want the bipartisan cover, and they want people to actually think that the Democrats were the driving force behind it. That's what they desperately wanted during the Obama presidency and almost got. If they do it with united Republican government, it's like just a suicide mission, and I don't know that it makes that much sense from them, because if it is it's a suicide mission, or again, like I said before, they think they've broken American democracy, they can do whatever the hell they want.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other point, I think that there was a sincere belief within the Obama administration that the public really was motivated by the deficit, that the Tea Party was really like at least partially about the debt and not just about the fact that we had a black president, and just like a white, racial resentment tantrum. And I think there's a lot more beyond the fact that the party has moved left and is since then just generally. I think there is also a consciousness of, no one really cares about the debt. Like if we actually had a situation where we had high inflation and high interest rates and there was like an obvious debt crisis that was making people's material lives harder, then they'd care about the debt. Otherwise, it's just a big number that you just can ignore.
Otherwise, debt just meant black president, or out of control spending, or Chicago politics meant Muslim, or whatever. All of that kind of nonsense. I mean, before we wrap this up, do you sort of do you think that there is? Maybe I'm stating the obvious here, but there is utility in continuing to put as much pressure, particularly on a Collins on this type of thing. Everybody should be reminded that, Murkowski, who voted the right way on healthcare, she essentially traded her vote on this for drilling in the Arctic wildlife refuge, which is one of the most just sort of, just the kind of disgusting deal. People should remember exactly who she is and who all of these people are. And then, more broadly, they started the class war, and we're going to have to finish it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Collins is in a more difficult position than she was in the first vote, and I think that you've got a lot of Republican senators who are very near death. Where like there's just an actuarial risk like every week with Ad Cochran and John McCain, and then obviously there's the Doug Jones Alabama race, which is so they really did not want to have to go back to the Senate. And they're going to have to go back there, and they can only lose 2 votes. So, yeah, I think there's definitely reason to be mobilizing around that and to see if you can make their lives harder.
Absolutely. Yeah. Make their lives as hard as possible on the phones and on email and in nonviolent demonstrations. It is the least you can do to repay them for all their plans that they have to shorten people's lives and increase mass human suffering, so that I guess like the Koch brothers can look at another data point in some bank vertical or something, whatever the justification is. Eric Levitz, he's a staff writer for New York Magazine. I really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, everybody. We are going to go in a few minutes to the fun half. This is where we take your IMs, we take your calls, and it's also something that only members get. So join the Majority Report, majority.fm / become a member. $10 a month. You get a 5-day-a-week show with all premium content. And, I guess the fun half is there's a lot more entertainment value in it. We give you the deep nutrition up front, and then a lot of comedy in the second half, including characters like my Nation of Islam Obama, who did briefly make an appearance there.
Who's laughing now, Sam?
Oh, God. I think that Mike Cernovich added like a 10-year life expectancy to Sam's to life and to like his verticality.
Mike Cernovich, Cernovich.com.
Could you hit me with the other one again, please, one more time?
Who's laughing now, Sam?
We are. Thank you. And very eager.
Basically all week.
Yes, we've been laughing and very eager to get to work on the documentary. I host the Michael Brooks Show, which launched in August. That is a show that comes out for public once a week, for patrons 3 times a week. It's a deep dive show, also from the left, the Democratic Socialist left, with illicit histories, premium content. We're at about 850-something patrons. Our first goal is to reach 1K. You can check it out, patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to it on iTunes, Michael Brooks Show. There's a bunch of reviews on it there. It's also on YouTube on the Sam Seder Majority Report channel, which you guys should all subscribe to as well. 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. We will see you in the fun half.
Are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
Psych. Fuck 'em.
almost says what?
What?
Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
You see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total
Pussy.
Welcome to the fun half. See, Mike Cernovich, JJ Danarchy did all those clips for you. You don't even have to do research. Although, unfortunately, it's all satire and comedy and parody. The only thing we should just say briefly, we were talking about this. Matt made the point that the satiric tweet targeting people that would excuse Roman Polanski because he made Chinatown, which is essentially what this all boils down to. Some people, including people that I like, who wrote very good profiles, like, I agree with Sam. It wasn't a bad joke. It was funny satire. And it was so perfect because, how do we put it? It was just edgy enough for a literal-minded moron
to
like
think
Mike
they got
Cernovich to think they got us, but also just so unbelievably obvious that even Greg Gutfeld had to back us.
Even Paul Joseph Watson.
Paul Joseph Watson.
Which, actually, I thought maybe like he's a bit competitive with Cernovich if he was trying to play the, oh, this guy's the dumb, whatever, alt-right figure.
Dude, I want to say look, I am not into, and people have said this, that we're getting like taste of our own medicine or something. Like, I'm into critiquing, humiliating, correcting the record, letting people know exactly who it is you're talking about. I don't call for deplatforming people. I don't. But I will say this. Alex Jones is a terrible person in my estimation. But I think he runs a pretty tight ship. And Weird Mike is effing up a lot of segments for Alex. Now, it's great for us, and it's great for great talents like Vic Berger. But just showman to showman, to have to watch Alex Jones do an incredible segment where he's spinning some unbelievably elaborate nonsense, and then to have Weird Mike fuck it up, just on a show-to-show level, I'm like, Alex, come on, man. You at least got to, I don't know, maybe Alex could set up a GoFundMe for Mike to do some media training or something. Because it's sad.
Sam used to do media training down in D.C. and host sessions for people. Maybe
Mike just needs some help.
Maybe Weird Mike needs a lot of help. And I think that by the end of this, if Weird Mike, released an apology, obviously not, we're lowest on the list. He's any number of everybody from, black people to rape victims to the world that he should apologize to. And if he went into therapy, actual therapy, not like, pill-based
guerrilla
visual.
therapy.
Yeah, not guerrilla therapy. Actual therapy.
Jane Goodall therapy.
Yes. No, Jane Goodall therapy
Goodall
would
would
be
work
good
wonders.
for him too.
Yeah.
Jane Goodall. That would be great. If we could drop him in like the middle. Yeah, that's a synergy. Hang out with, you know what? If we could find a a primate specialist who's hanging out with bonobos, like really peaceful, loving apes.
The bonobo mindset.
The bonobo mindset. We just need to love each other. And it's true, Mike. We do just need to love each other.
Maybe that's his second act.
His second act.
It's the bonobo mindset.
It's the bonobo mindset. And then Sam can give you media training so you know how to promote your book properly. Because if you do the bonobo mindset, then you'll have a much potentially bigger audience than just, deranged people that you rant in your Periscope at. Speaking of somebody who should just be ranting at random people through Periscope, but for some actually for many reasons, is President of the United States, Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump alluded to another conspiracy that Mike Cernovich spread during the campaign, which was, of course, the Hillary Clinton is on death's door conspiracy. Thing that I never understood. Well, I mean, I understood it perfectly, but it was like amazing because as someone, I voted for Hillary Clinton. I was an adamant Bernie supporter. She was obviously preferable to Trump. That's a fucking no-brainer. That's obvious. But there is endless grounds to legitimately critique Hillary Clinton. Of course, you can't do that if you're a misogynist, plutocrat huckster. So you need to make shit up and run with shit that other people have created on the internet. And Mike Cernovich helped spread the she has Parkinson's conspiracy theory. And Trump alluded to it in the campaign. He made a lot of hay out of it. In fact, I think we have, this is a drop of Trump talking about Hillary's health.
And she short-circuited. She used the term short-circuited. She took a little short circuit in the brain, and she's got problems. I mean,
I wish that we could just have like an image of like a movie projector hitting a wall after we play that clip. But that being said, in this press conference this morning announcing this new catastrophe that the administration has unleashed on the Middle East, it looks like Trump. Maybe there's some glitching going on.
Today, let us rededicate ourselves to a path of mutual understanding and respect. Let us rethink old assumptions and open our hearts and minds to possible and possibilities. And finally, I ask the leaders of the region, political and religious, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Christian and Muslim, to join us in the noble quest for lasting peace. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel. God bless the Palestinians. And God bless the United States. Thank you very much.
I personally, I want a president that doesn't glitch.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now it is time for, this is a semi-regular right-wing segment we do on the Majority Report called Baseless Speculation About Other People's Health. Let's go around. Brendan, you had the most charitable and least inventive take, and I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, not to get like Zapruder on this, but if you watch the tape, it looks like his bottom teeth are about to fall out of his skull.
So you're suggesting a dentures scenario?
Yeah, I think those teeth, those chompers are fake as Washington's.
Those are fake as Washington's. I buy it. Jamie, baseless health speculation about Donald Trump.
I mean, that seems like the most logical explanation, but I feel like I need to come up with something better and more outlandish, so maybe come back to me.
Okay, we will definitely get back to you. Baseless and outlandish is what we're looking for, of course. Matt?
I think he's evolving into his final form.
Powerful stuff. Yes.
Ooh,
Jamie.
like a reptilian?
Yeah.
Is he beginning to shed his
more
skin?
like fat content.
Yes. Yes. Do you have yours now, Jamie?
I mean, yeah, I would just say he's, to elaborate on Matt's point, he is transforming into the grotesque reptilian world-controlling monster that he has always been on the inside.
This thing about Donald Trump that's amazing is that he is just like, he has multiple sub-personalities and they're all bad. and he is the distillation of everything that's wrong in our society, from like late stage capitalism to like Queen scumbaggery.
I'm like a Hieronymus Bosch.
I'm like a Hieronymus Bosch.
America in a person.
America.
I
Okay.
mean, has anyone gotten close enough to smell him? Does he smell like sulfur? Has
Only
anyone
my
checked?
daughter.
Probably smells like McDonald's wrappers.
Yeah, I was going
or
to say, he
something.
smells like a McDonald's wrapper. Exactly. I know. I mean, Chavez had the great line about Bush smelling like sulfur, but I think that this is pre-sulfur. In some ways, though, I actually think, like, of course he's not in good... I can't imagine he's in good health. But in some ways, he is actually a testament to some type of medical miracle. Because apparently all the guy does is just eat fast food and have rage-gasms all day. And here is Corey Lewandowski, who is the sort of one of the kind of original Trump campaign thugs, total friggin' New England meathead dude.
He's Dum Dum Bob Haldeman.
He is Dum Dum Bob Haldeman. That is that is so clutch, Matt. That is like I love it because it wasn't exactly like Bob Haldeman was known for being like a rocket scientist either. Corey Lewandowski, very dumb guy, very loyal to Trump. He has a new book out. It's called Let Trump Be Trump. And he is talking on CNN about Trump's diet. And we're going to have to acknowledge after this that that guy is a fucking medical miracle.
Would order for dinner 2 Big Macs, 2 filet-of-fish sandwiches, and a chocolate milkshake and eat all of that. Were you concerned about him?
Well, he never ate the bread, which is the important part. So it was really just, it was a couple of fish sandwiches and a couple of pieces of meat and a drink. And, was I concerned? No. He was so busy campaigning, we didn't have time to sit down for a meal.
Okay, so this guy basically lives off of like, I don't even know what a fish fillet is. And then like the worst, most grotesque factory produced meat. Like the fact, and I am not wishing this on him, the fact that he does not have colon cancer is literally science defying.
I mean, they say if you do enough heroin, you eventually kind of pickle your insides and live a long time, like Burroughs or someone. So maybe if you eat enough preservatives, it's kind of the same thing.
It literally preserves you.
I got the pickled insides, yeah.
I wish Trump had done heroin in the 80s. It could have caused a lot of us a lot less problems. Imagine if Trump's just like, yeah, I wanted to take over the world, but I'm just strung out.
Yeah, a couple pieces of meat. I actually worked at McDonald's in high school for 2 years. 4 pieces of meat and 2 Big Macs.
Yeah, that's disgusting. And I love how Corey Lewandowski.
And wait a second,
Corey
sorry.
Lewandowski's on like just real quick. He's on like a 2000 like Atkins. Like he's just like, it's the bread. That's all that matters, dude. You could literally eat like a hormone factory 5 times a day and have like sugar, preservative, coloring, and in fast food too. A lot of the taste of fast food is like literally produced at scent making factories in New Jersey, right? Yeah.
I'm going to call bullshit on the doesn't eat the bread, though. Why would you order Big Macs, which consists of 3 pieces of bread? Like the only difference between a Big Mac and like a double is the extra piece of bread and the mac sauce.
So you're saying that these people lie so much
They'd lie
that
about a
Corey
Big Mac.
Lewandowski could not even restrain himself from a lie about this bastard's bread eating.
He's eating the bread.
He's eating the bread.
One take I saw regarding the fast food that I thought was pretty insightful was that it's a byproduct of Trump's OCD and his need for cleanliness, because he said on record that, McDonald's, Wendy's, they make one bad burger. They're out, folks. So I'm going to get a good burger every time.
That's true.
And my cement mixer stomach will continue to persist.
Kind of ironic considering the conditions in the slaughterhouses that produce the pink slime.
I don't even.
No one ever took him there.
Do you think? I don't even think he has an awareness of like, not that it would make any difference. Like he would never, like, of course, like Sonny Perdue. We don't even have time to talk about what that guy's doing at the Department of Agriculture. It's a assault on every part of the American food supply, of course, because that's the point of Republican policy. But like, I think. Trump's like, yeah, like that's the McDonald's farm. And then they get French fries and
it's from the song.
It's from the song. The clowns are there, and then they become a burger. They have a great life. There is that part of like he's so malevolent and so disgusting, but there is still a kind of like disarming stupidity about the man.
Like he views the world like it's Charlotte's Web or something.
Yeah, totally. It's like Charlotte's Web. Ooh, maybe we'll let you go. You're a cute pig. You're a white pig. You're calling from a 6. You know what? This screen is like mad small. You're calling from a 610 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Michael.
Yes.
It's Michael from Pennsylvania. How are you?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
Hey, can I talk to you about that Roy Moore race for a couple seconds?
Definitely.
So I noticed that a lot of people are getting kind of down on Doug Jones and that he's going to lose.
Yeah.
And
seemed like Weigel had a sort of optimistic read on it yesterday.
Yeah, that's what kind of I've been having this optimistic feeling too. I've had a pretty good track record looking at the polls lately. I don't know if I'm just
shut the
getting
fuck
lucky,
up. I'll fucking drop you. Don't ever. This is John from San Antonio. If Mike comes on. First of all, he's depressing turnout, and I have a much better record than him. I'll smack him across the goddamn face.
I would love that to happen.
Me too.
But
fair enough. Yeah, no, but go ahead. I want to hear this,
drag
please.
your ass over the top rope like WWE, Mike.
It's all love.
but
We
if you
just
look at
for
the
new
poll,
people.
like-
Actually, let me just say this for new people. John from San Antonio is a brilliant statistician and analyst of the polls,
Oh, Jesus
and Mike from PA is an incredibly shrewd, smart, historically grounded, like actual political operative. These are the people that we get calling into the show. We have very, very smart callers.
Well,
although
thank you,
not
Mike. I
all of
appreciate
them,
that.
not all of them are smart. If people get the joke that I'm making now, some of them are not so smart. Okay, go ahead.
And so anyway, I've been looking at it, and first of all, the pollsters that are doing polls suck ass.
Yes.
So these are not like quality people.
What kind of polls
And
are they?
two, they're like local TV pollsters,
okay.
and like it's I think Gravis was like one of the major ones who did it, and they
Right.
tend not to be considered the best.
Right.
So the quality of the polls is low. But one thing that I'm noticing looking through the internals, which most people never do, is that Moore has about a 20-point less favorable rating than Donald Trump in Alabama. So that is disastrous for a special election because people actually have to get off their ass and go vote specifically for Moore. It's not like it's part of their normal routine of like showing up and it's election day, everybody vote. They have to like make a conscious decision to get out there and vote for someone. And, with Dave's on the ground reporting and the fact that the numbers are like Doug Jones is winning in some of these polls. And the ones where he's losing by a couple points. I actually think he's got a pretty good shot.
This is another thing. I want to run this by you too. I don't know how relevant this is, but it was occurring to me recently too that people talk obviously like Alabama is a state where Trump is very popular, and a lot of the dynamics around Trump, there's immense wealth inequity in Alabama. There's an incredible amount of corruption in that state's political culture and in the Republican Party there, and of course, obviously racism and misogyny, the core building blocks of Republican politics. But it does seem to me that Roy Moore is he's Ted Cruz mold, not Donald Trump mold, in the sense that
I don't know, dude. He's like so fucked up, though. Like I don't mean to.
Oh, they're both
sorry to
very
interrupt you,
They're
sorry.
both extremely fucked up, and I'm not talking about their personal.
beyond that.
They're not. I'm not talking about their conduct. I'm not equating that, but I think that Ted Cruz and the contingent that would be inclined to show up for more, like those evangelicals who got more likely to support him after the charges that he was a predator started emerging. That's a specific type of fanatical Christian grievance vote. Trump got a lot of those voters, but he also got, the kind of just hardcore certain types of, bigots, obviously, which of course would vote for more, and then people with the misdirected economic populism. And I'm just wondering if part of that coalition in this enthusiasm gap and the 20 points lower than Trump, maybe not all part of that coalition is particularly excited for this guy who isn't even exactly in the mold of their guy, if that makes sense.
So like Dave talked about these kind of more affluent Mitt Romney type voters, right? Which were the base of the Republican Party and college educated, stuff like that.
Right.
And I think those people really are actually significantly going away from the Democratic Party. What the exciting part is...
You mean from the Republican Party?
The stuff that going away from the Republican Party, sorry.
Yep.
The exciting thing is, for the Democrats right now, is people who vote are moving away from the Republican Party, but there's this huge untapped resource on top of that. And that untapped resource is overwhelmingly Democratic-leaning voters.
Right.
If we get a good organization, we could have a fundamental realignment of our political system. And one of the facts, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show before, but from 1930, which was when FDR was elected and swept into office, until 1992, the Democrats held the House of Representatives for 58 of the 62 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of country we really have.
Right.
And since Bill Clinton realigned the Democratic Party into this neoliberal mush,
right,
they've held the House for 4 of 22 years.
There's only the only successes in modern democratic politics, and I think there's a variety. There was the structural backlash to the right starting in the 80s and even the late 70s. In fact, it's definitely a major part of it. The massive, increased corporate influence of all of American politics, the assault on labor unions, and of course what Clinton did to the party. But there's a variety of factors. But just as a basic fact, Democrats have performed well in elections in 2 scenarios in modern politics. Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, who are 2 of the most charismatic politicians in modern politics, period. Or, as in 2006, Republicans are so, or in fact, even these are special elections, and arguably, Republicans are so just beyond atrocious that there is a reaction to them. It has not been in the sort of structural affirmative sense of the old Democratic coalition anytime in the modern era, and that's why they've had a very hard time holding on to power.
That's the opportunity we have, is to rebuild that coalition in a new way. Obviously, we wanted to get rid of some of the Alabama parts that
they're gone.
Eagerly have joined and taken over. They're
gone.
They've taken over the Republican Party.
The future of Southern Democratic politics, ironically, is going to be super left, because who's left? People of color. If you look at some state party initiatives, and it's not where it needs to be, and of course, people can be neoliberal, obviously, regardless of racial and sexual identity, but I think there's a lot of room. And Doug Jones, I think, seems like he's doing a decent job of co-tapping into. On one hand, I won't embarrass you. I'm not, let me say, a pedophile. How about that? That appeals to the college-educated, embarrassed folks. He's also, he has legends like John Lewis campaigning with him. I mean, he's talking about prosecuting Klan terrorists. He's on that.
Yeah.
He is doing it. He's doing a good job with that.
Yeah. And he actually hasn't run to the right. I mean, I think we don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good.
I agree.
And Doug Jones has run as far left as I think you can reasonably expect him to run in Alabama.
Especially abortion.
He's not running away from.
Yeah.
He's not running away from abortion. He's not running away from protecting minority rights. He's running at these issues, and I think even more left-wing program might even work better, but he has actually shown a path of having some balls and actually going after Roy Moore, attacking him for what he is, which is a child predator. So that's what's going on. So I think he's got a pretty good shot, and I'll let you guys go.
From your lips to Allah's ears.
I saw Virgil Texas on Twitter the other night. Oh, he couldn't hear me. I saw Virgil Texas on Twitter the other night. He said that it made this point that the GOP wouldn't be getting involved again with Roy Moore if it wasn't close. If he was just going to stroll to victory,
Of course.
they'd keep their hands off him.
No doubt. All right, Mike.
Oh, no, that's absolutely right. Yeah, you have a good one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the call.
Good to see you. Goodbye.
You are calling from a... It really is like... I have like good eyesight. This is like minuscule. You're calling from a 261 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 261?
Hello?
Yep, you're on.
Oh, hey, I'm Jonathan from Dallas, and I'm wondering what you think about weird Mike Fernikov saying that he's merely employing the tactics the left has employed against the right.
We like those tactics.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, cool. Sure. I mean, look, I've said before, I think that there's a variety of different lanes that this conversation can go in, right? Like, a guy like John Ronson has written about So You've Been Publicly Shamed and this kind of like broader culture of like social media got you and toxicity. And I think that is a conversation that includes but absolutely transcends politics. And it's a question about emotional intelligence. It's a question about how we behave online. Obviously, the example he uses of the woman who tweeted that dumb, stupid, and in fact, I would say bigoted, racist joke. Did she deserve to have her life totally torn apart and upended? No, of course not. And in general, I'm not, as I say, like, I'm not a deep platformer, really. I think, like, if some little twerp like Ben Shapiro is coming to your college campus, that shouldn't, like, if you're afraid of Ben Shapiro, don't get out of bed in the morning. Go humiliate him, ridicule him, make fun of him. And, for some people, if you keep your head cool and you make cogent points or you mock him, these types of people will be exposed for the just sort of ridiculous figures that they are. But I would never go to the administration and say, don't invite him. I remember at Bates in like 2007 or something, David Horowitz, who, is not really on the radar now, but he's a godfather of a lot of this stuff. He was actually going campus to campus to essentially, and this is another great irony of the right, he had like this whole campus project where essentially it was targeting and almost trying to get students to report on liberal professors. He came to the campus and, we listened to his nonsense, and he was obviously a very emotionally damaged man from growing up with like Stalinist parents or whatever his, communist Jewish psychodrama that led him to being a deranged right winger funded by horrible plutocrats was. And we, embarrassed him, and that was great. And so in general, like, I'm not calling, if Fox News wants to embarrass itself and have Mike Cernovich on again, then, have at it. I think it reflects their programming perfectly.
I do think Cernovich should be blocked from Twitter.
I think he should be blocked from Twitter, too, because he uses Twitter in a very specific... Look, when you cross the line into a type of maliciousness and targeting, that's a different conversation, and he absolutely has.
Well, yeah.
The guy who doxed one of Roy Moore's accusers has. That's a different conversation. And then number 3, I'm sorry I'm going on here, but just really quick. Number 3, like, look, sure, let's employ these tactics. And when we employ these tactics and we reveal that you're a fucking misogynist or a racist or a fucking idiot, and you reveal that we do satire, cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I think, honestly, though, he's implying that he used the same internet hate mob tactics, whether you agree with him or not. But he didn't.
There was no mob. There was no mob. I remember we monitored this.
He's not employing the same tactics.
We monitored this before the rap story came out, and there was like nothing. And I'm convinced, certainly, that some of the literally handful of people that tweeted in support of it were bots. It was nothing. He doesn't even. That's actually the other kind of interesting operational thing that this is revealing about the way these people operate. Like, look. Even if he did have a bunch of digital brown shirts, the same process would be in play, and MSNBC should never make any decision based off of anything Mike Cernovich says ever. But even on top of, just, the more narrow and less structural and important point is like, it's a lot of, it's a lot of screaming in the wind. And I mean, I guess, I know he has a lot of followers. I know Twitter gave him the legitimacy of a trek mark. I know he's terrorized and used Twitter to do a lot of terrible things. But in this instance, there wasn't any army. There was nothing. It was much ado about nothing until they made it about something by capitulating to this nonsense. And, thankfully now, obviously, they've come back to sanity.
Yeah. One last thing. Sam has been receiving a lot of criticism because he called Mike Cernovich a Nazi.
I haven't seen that criticism.
Well, I go all over the internet and I try to look into what these loons on the right are saying sometimes, but they're criticizing because Mike Cernovich has they're saying he has a mixed race daughter. I don't
care about people's. Andrew Jackson adopted a Native American child.
But
Andrew Jackson was an orchestrator of mass genocide. All I know is, didn't Mike Cernovich say in that video that he posted that you can call him whatever you want to call him?
He did, yeah.
So, okay.
I also understand why all of his all people on the right know that about Mike Cernovich.
Right. This kind of look, dude.
Bring it.
It could be. Speculation doesn't even matter. It could be that Mike Cernovich is just a deeply damaged, sad, embarrassed person who was humiliated that he, got alimony from his more successful ex-wife and wasn't where he wanted to be in his career. Maybe Mike Cernovich's instincts are to be Bonobo Cernovich, and he's a nice guy, and he doesn't like racism, and he doesn't like sex. I don't know. I'm just going to judge him by all the grotesque, vile shit. And also in that GoFundMe, I think didn't just it also mentioned look, Gorka,
if you don't want to be called
Gorka has direct links to, and wore the pin of a fascist organization.
And look at some hand gestures Cernovich throws up.
Yeah, and and they could say that they were trolling the media and it wasn't a real one, but look, they're playing a game, and they're playing a game of, read the Sartre essay. If you confront the anti-Semite, he'll be disingenuous. He won't take language seriously. He'll evade. And what he says in that essay is that the only way of really solving it, and I'm actually working on an essay about this, is ridicule and humiliation. That's the only thing that they truly fear. And I definitely think part of the reason that he went at us is, he can abide by outrage, but he couldn't abide by, oh, poor weird Mike. Sad.
Yeah, that's.
Do you want to say something, Jamie?
I don't know.
Jamie's just going to jump in.
Like, all those assholes know each other anyway. Like, I feel like they have this sort of dream team going on where some of them are openly racist, and some of them are openly misogynistic.
Look at the
and then at the end of the
BuzzFeed
day,
expose on how, and I don't know, and to be fair, I don't think Cernovich was mentioned in it, but it's exactly what Jamie was saying. I just want to underline it, not to interrupt, but look at the BuzzFeed expose on Milo and how Breitbart operated, including with people who did have overtly, white supremacist politics. It's all a fucking shell game.
Yeah, you can not be a Nazi, but hang out around Nazis, agree with most of what they say, and when they say truly bigoted stuff, just be like, oh, you, what are you then?
Yeah, exactly.
How are you not a Nazi at that point?
if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
Yeah.
I don't know if they really want to get into what subset of fascist Mike Cernovich is, because
right. Exactly. What subset? I would definitely go back to my original coinage during the campaign of Donald Trump representing clown fascism, and I would put Mike Cernovich certainly at the center of that. Thanks for the call, man.
Yeah, thanks.
You're calling from a 617 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Вы мне говорите.
Hello?
Слушайте. Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I am alright. How are you, Mikhail Klinovich?
I'm doing very well.
Excellent. My
I'm laughing now.
So great. Very good. I can't hear you very well, but that's not a problem. where to begin? Well, if you're foreign minister of Dirtbag left, I hope to think I'm one of your underlings in field.
Oh, I like
yeah.
that title. Yes. Okay.
All right, rock and roll. Hi, it is Rachel in Kiev.
In Kiev.
Okay, so it is like, yes, it's Kiev, not Kiev.
Kiev. Excuse me.
It's okay. It's okay. Whatever. I mean, it's not like lethal or sexy as other international topics in news and such that you've been covering as of late, but just wanted to share that I was lucky enough to witness someone who is a good friend and business partner of both George W. Bush and Donald Trump, as he managed to crawl through the emergency exit in the roof of a police van before being sheltered by a throng of followers half a block or so into the sanctity of a church for protection.
Who is this?
This would be Mikhail Saakashvili. I don't know.
Saakashvili is the former president of Georgia.
Former president of Georgia, and then after that, again, I won't bore all the listeners, but then afterwards was also he immigrated from Georgia to Ukraine and was the governor of the of Odessa province, which is the main port around Ukraine's Black Sea area.
Right.
He was the guy there, and he was tight with the president Pyotr Poroshenko for a while, and then they just decided apparently their versions of so-called clean corruption didn't agree with each other. So Poroshenko decided to just revoke Saakashvili's citizenship, and that was earlier this year. And it's been a rough process. He's come and gone, but this past couple days ago, just marched back into Kiev. Well, marched in his Mercedes, but and I was honestly just down the street. I'm not a journalist or anything. I just kind of checked my phone, oh, there's something happening on here. Just walked up the street, and his supporters had essentially pulled up the cobblestones in the road to make a giant barricade to make sure that the van he was stuck in could not move, and some of them I can't even speak of the gear because I don't have the background in it.
We'll follow up more.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of,
so
this is interesting. This guy was a neocon's dream.
You didn't take video, did you?
Yeah. Did you get any video?
I took photos, not video.
Definitely consent. You want to post the photos in the Michael Brooks Show Discord?
I already did, actually.
Okay, awesome. Then I will collect them, and we will definitely use them.
All right, cool. See you next week, I hope, or something.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers. All right.
Okay, we had this just in. Mike Cernovich tweets, "I'm thrilled MSNBC has made the decision that people shouldn't be fired over satirical tweets. This rule will surely be applied equally to all sides. And if it's not, we will bring back Sam Theater's tweet every time the media goes after someone else for a tweet." Well, let me be the first to say that I would love to do a re-review of this process every couple of weeks.
He's promising us free publicity.
Yeah, thank you for your continued commitment to the exposure, funding, and expansion of this show. So first of all, thank you. And secondly, I think that what Mike is trying to do here in turning this humiliating, sad loss into a win is run some interference for a lot of people, but also because we've done a lot of re-reviewing of his grotesque tweets about rape, about essentially being glad Trayvon Martin is dead because women won't be raped in the future. He's a very rape-obsessed guy, maybe going back to a charge that he pled down in his past. And so I'm assuming that what he's just going to try to do is sort of leverage this so that people don't remind you constantly of what a dangerous and despicable record person this guy is. And as I said before, I'm not trying to get anybody fired over a tweet. I don't think anybody should get fired over a singular tweet. And I'm not even trying to get...
Well, if it was affirming, maybe Roman Polanski should be able to rape, then if that was literally what it was.
If that literally what it was, maybe so. Fair enough. But that being said, I am all for people using people's public record to be clear about who they are and what they represent. And that's why we're at work, obviously, on the documentary. So people are going to have a user manual about who this guy is, and he won't be able to, because there's other people that he's really harmed. I mean, this turned out well for us, but there's, he's gone after a lot of very good people, and we're going to talk about that. Then, of course, he's also fed a broader culture of everything from racism to misogyny to xenophobia to conspiracies to Trump. Because, look, in order to feed plutocratic politics, you need to build off of people's anxieties, magical thinking, fantasy life, bigotry, and depressed search for easy answers. And that's what this guy does. So I'm thrilled to keep exposing his history every time. And to the first point, I don't believe that he's thrilled, because he seemed more thrilled when he was fired. But if you are thrilled, then let us share in a moment of camaraderie. You and I are both thrilled. Suffering second.
But now, Sam.
And again.
Yeah, I don't know who he's referring to in this tweet, but if you go through some of the stuff he's said, there's nothing satirical about it. Like, this is full-on MRA rape apologist bullshit.
Right. That's another thing, too, is that these people are, they are at war on language. They're at war on basic contextualization and intelligence. And I agree, in fact. I think that there are some people who identify on the left, I don't even know if I would really consider them in some cases to be on the left, who also have totally over-literalized language. Although I have to say, in this case, I didn't see it from anybody.
Very few people.
Very, very few people. As I told CNN about the only person that was happy with this decision, and I'm sure is maybe not thrilled, is David Duke. But, there is a flattening effect and flattening effort to make it all the same. And when you make it all the same, down to the point, by the way, that we're not even making because one thing that we're going to have to do that's less pleasant, and this is out of the speech realm, is we're going to have to make distinctions between different types of behaviors that in fact are both unacceptable, but we're going to need to recognize they're not the same thing. On this level, we're dealing with Sam has a history of satirically attacking people that would excuse rape. You have a history of supporting and emboldening, yes, rape culture, which is a thing. So you're not going to flatten language. And anybody on our side who is willing to give up the tools of satire and irony and over-literalizes too, it's not a good look for a broader audience, and it's going to play into these people's hands because it's all disingenuous.
But like we said, there was none of that.
None of that. No, it was really impressive. I mean, this was a great test case of like, well, here it is. Here's clear satire and irony with, I guess, an edge. And basically everybody rose to the occasion, contrary to all of the, whatever keeps some idiot like Dave Rubin up at night about college campuses or whatever. I don't think he said anything about it, which is very interesting. I guess it's much more important to credulously nod along to like a IQ huckster promoting pseudoscience racism to feed some horrible YouTube channel than when you have literally the one instance in broad popular culture where something that you're constantly whining, catastrophizing, and hyperventilating about has actually happened, and you got nothing on it. Maybe because Mike Cernovich was a guest on your show. Was he really? Yes, he was. Look it up. Dave Rubin is someone else who also is going to absolutely need to be exposed. Not deplatformed, exposed. People should just know who they're dealing with. You can read and watch and listen to whoever the fuck you want. And people should be able to say whatever the fuck they want. But everybody should know exactly who they're dealing with. Cuck Todd. As I'm accustomed to in the bedroom, at Sam Seder retakes the spotlight from me on MSNBC. JB Weaver, MSNBC didn't grow a spine. The backlash scared them. Mainstream mafia.
Same thing.
Same thing. After watching the most recent episode of the Michael Brooks Show, I finally heard something I never knew I needed to hear. Right-wing Caribbean man. Well, that was actually right-wing Caribbean woman, in fact, but fair enough. Waz and I in the last Michael Brooks Show did we did what would be the Trump black cabinet as an illustration of like how racist we are. Like if you had a cabinet that was like headed by Don King, like O.J. Simpson and Ben Carson. Ben Carson would be in both cabinets, so it worked. And then he said Bill Cosby, and I was like, yeah, the only people that defend Bill Cosby are like definitely a lot of Caribbean people and racist white people. And so, yes, check it out. It was a very funny impression. Sewer socialism. Johnson started working at his in-laws' plastic packaging company. Packer is the name. They basically make that sterilized medical device packaging. Extreme. Oh, Gorkovich. I am not a used car salesman. Crapo Zappo. NPR yesterday was debating whether or not Bitcoin is a bubble. A year ago, it was over 1,000 Bitcoin. Now it's 13,000. Give me a break.
I just saw on Twitter it's at 19,000 right now.
Wow.
My guess is yes, and I'm not an economist.
My guess is yes, too. What I don't understand about Bitcoin is why not use an alternative platform to build in better rules for how money works versus just a cryptocurrency to buy drugs and support,
And based on like who has how you generate Bitcoin is like processing power, it just dumb.
Yeah.
It's obviously made by nerds, if that's
right. And by the way, we learn every day nerds are a big problem.
Whoever has the most money is who has the biggest computer.
Smallest computer, but with the most power. Most power. You're calling from a 203 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
This is Jay, calling from New Haven.
Hello, Jay. How are you, my friend?
Fine, thanks. One criticism, and I don't mean to take it out on your production
not
staff.
Criticism day, Jay.
It's a no criticism,
What?
Jay. Nope. Not happening.
I can't hear anybody while you're on hold. You can't hear anybody but the MC of this show, so you can't hear any sound.
That's no longer
so you
true.
can hardly hear anyone.
Yeah, gotcha.
I think that's no longer true.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep, gotcha.
Anything else besides
Fixed. Everything else. I see that Donald Trump Jr. just wrote a sarcastic tweet about Al Franken, believe it or not, on Twitter. I think you can probably believe that.
He wrote a sarcastic tweet about Al Franken. Okay, Great. That makes total
All right, that
sense.
just happened 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Well, I might as well do what everyone else is doing and talk about the Michael Brooks show today, I think.
That sounds...
Sam's not
Now
there.
you just earned yourself another couple minutes on the line.
Now, I had another suggestion for these days when Sam's not there and old folks like us need a fix. You could have a segment, and Brendan could do this because he's probably looking to score some points with the boss. You could have like a segment called...
Oh, what? I'm sorry. I'm listening now.
Yes?
Call it Tales from the Spectrum, and you go back into the archives and find Sam saying some quintessentially Sam things that,
Right.
taken out of context, boggle the mind, and just play those.
That
in
could
little
be funny.
snippets, a segment.
Are you saying
Yeah.
Sam?
I
is the
would vote
autism
for.
spectrum?
I would vote for concentration camps. Yes, that's like the one that people were running with. The classic. Would you vote for the candidate that had less concentration camps over more concentration camps? And I have to say, like, I was re-looking at that recently, and I was like, I totally agree with Sam 100%. But my first instinct might be like, that's a obnoxious question, or I have a hard time with the framing of that. I don't think that, but Sam went right to yes, yes,
No,
I
you come
would.
at it from
Hello.
Sam's unique perspective that many of us, are not.
Well, I've actually
tuned
heard
into.
that in the renegotiation on MSNBC, Sam is trying to mandate that the Social Security actuarial table will be posted in the MSNBC green room so that Republicans can't lie about it anymore.
Well, I hope he gets an on-air apology at the very least.
Indeed.
I think, and much will be said. It was a little weird that Hayes did not say anything. He was completely obtuse when he was tweeting
a lot about it. Let's.
I'm not just saying, and it occurs to me that
Hayes did a lot.
Working.
Hayes did a lot, and I have no doubt that people did stuff behind. A lot of people probably did stuff behind the scenes. I say this with
that's what I'm assuming, that he wasn't making a public thing about it. He was working behind the scenes to get it corrected.
Everybody has to remind themselves that even even people of ultra privilege, NBA players, TV hosts, they're still workers. They're still in that fundamentally extractive, unequal relationship.
Despite it being cable news, like, you would be surprised by how structured and tight knit and closed off these environments are.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. They have very, very rigid boundaries they have to work in.
So
Rachel Maddow was a different broadcaster when she was on Air America Radio, and
this is
I
Rachel
get that.
Maddow.
It's plain.
Right.
There's nothing more corporate than Comcast in this day and age, and that's who owns MSNBC.
Right.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for the call, man. All right. Let's do a bit more sound. Let me just do this. Actually, let's just. I really enjoyed this, and this was, there were so many people. Obviously, like Sarah Silverman and Mark Maron and Andy Richter and Neil Dash, and I mean, it just ran. It's like one of those things that I don't want to list because it was just sort of an endless amount of people. But I did. I always have a fun time when I go out to LA and I do the Young Turks, and I know not all of these people, but I know Ben pretty well, and I know Jank a little bit, and I really enjoyed the way Jank showed up on this, and appreciate it. So let's just take a little segment, a snippet here of Jank Uger. This was a couple days ago of his response to the Sam Seder situation.
Okay, now as you see there, he's a former MSNBC contributor because they, in essence, have fired him. So what are we going to do at the TYT Network? Sam Seder, you are not fired. Get out of here, man. Are you kidding me? This is an attack by the alt-right, by an absolute, let me be careful with my adjectives here, a bad actor, to say the least, as you're about to see.
Yeah, I really just want to co-sign on that. Be careful with the adjectives thing. I think about that every day. We have to talk about this jackass. And then Jank did actually a brilliant job. It
was a good 13-minute segment.
Yeah, really good 13 segment.
It was very satisfying and almost surreal to watch him speak about something so personal to us.
And do it so well. Yeah. I mean, I really felt
classic him mode.
Yeah, classic Jank mode. And I remember we follow each other on Twitter, and I was like, thanks, brother. And he retweeted it and everything. And it was a nice moment of camaraderie, and I appreciated that and wanted to thank him for it. Now we have Gutfeld. Oh yeah. Oh, Greg. I don't know if you have those. We didn't pull these, but Greg Gutfeld tweeted out, and I think even Ben Shapiro retweeted something to the effect of like, Sam Seder is an insufferable leftist who hates my guts, but MSNBC should apologize and reinstate him. And I quote tweeted it, and I said, "We hate you back, and thank you." Which I realized, and I remember one very literal-minded Twitter person was like, "He did not say that he hated you. He said that Sam Seder hated him. You're a journalist who cannot read." Which was a good reminder of why nerds are terrible. This is Greg Gutfeld's tweet. I mean, but it really, this was, I mean, honestly, even this, like, there was something heartening about at least some mass act of like people reminding each other that they could read. Like that was good to see. This is also something I want to note. I've had, and this is a very good friend of mine, Luke Mayville, on this program. I'm going to be having him soon on TMBS. He is an academic. He wrote a book on John Adams and inequality. And he, I believe, is still an adjunct or I don't remember his position, but he's still at Columbia University. But he's also spent a significant amount of time back in his native Idaho as a organizer, doing grassroots work, first in his community to save funding for a public school system, which was under assault by a local kind of Tea Party initiative. And now more broadly, they're working to expand Medicaid access in Idaho. And they've got a petition. They're going to get it on the ballot. And he's announcing that accomplishment. And this is somebody who, in addition to writing a really important book and being like a promising young academic, is actually figuring out how to do serious organizing work for healthcare in a deep red state. So let's take a look at this victory from Luke Mayville.
I'm Luke Mayville with the Medicaid for Idaho campaign, and tonight I have very good news. For 4 long, difficult years, our Idaho legislators have refused to expand Medicaid. That means that for 4 years, we've been sending federal tax dollars to fund programs in other states, while our Idaho legislators have failed to bring that money back into Idaho. And those are tax dollars that could have saved rural hospitals from closure all across the state, could have created 14,000 new jobs, and could have extended quality, affordable health care to 78,000 Idahoans who desperately need it. Here's the good news. Tonight, for the first time ever, you can visit MedicaidForIdaho.org and you can download a petition. You can print out a petition to put Medicaid expansion on the ballot, to give Idaho voters an opportunity to do something that Idaho's legislature has refused to do. Here's our challenge to you. Complete and submit one petition within the next week. And you can do that in 4 simple steps. First, visit MedicaidForIdaho.org and print our 2-page petition document. Second, on the second page of the petition, find 12 neighbors who will sign their signature, print their name, and give their information in order to sign the petition. Third, visit your local post office or bank and have your petition sheet notarized at the bottom of the second page. And finally, deliver your petition to your local county leader, whose information you can find on our website, or alternatively, mail your petition sheets directly to the mailing address of our headquarters, which you can also find on our website.
So that's how it's done. I mean, I cannot emphasize, people and ask, how do we literally do this? They saved funding for a school, and now they're going on for a much more aggressive effort. And I have talked to Luke about it, and he definitely said, yes, as would be expected, if you approach people in Idaho, as an example, who are in any way persuadable, not, completely foregone into the cult, but are on the map of potential persuadables, you go at them on healthcare, they're open. They get it. Everybody innately gets necessities like healthcare, and they actually have an instinct for the class structures and distortions of profit motive that lead to them not having it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of puts the lie to the idea that Americans are too conservative to vote for a thing like single-payer healthcare, because actually people do want healthcare, and a lot of the resentment among sort of right populist populations comes from these stingy little means-tested programs that they don't get to access.
Oh, definitely. No, we talked about that too, and he definitely was saying to me, and I don't want to, very much paraphrasing him, but we did have this conversation of again, from back to the conversation with Eric, being on the ground and doing grassroots organizing, community organizing in Idaho, any vestige of even a fraction of a percentage point of normal people being well, I don't know about the deficit. It's not there. Well, I mean, what is there sometimes is people say some really horrifying racist shit. Nobody ever, there's not a single normal terrestrial human that has talked about the deficit. Let's play a clip of someone who is not a sane, normal terrestrial human. And I think this is important. Look, far-right Israeli politics have always been important to track for several reasons. One, because the reality of what modern Israel is. There's a siege in Gaza. There's an occupation in the West Bank. It is absolutely functionally an apartheid state by any rational, fair reading of that word. And if you are a modern person of any variety, I mean, there's one party in Israel that could even be recognizable on a map of what we would consider to be sort of like proper Obama-era Democratic opinion on inclusion, and that is the Moretz Party, which is considered to be quite to the left of the Israeli spectrum, and Bernie Sanders has endorsed and aligned with them very much to his credit. And they are not radical, they're not binational democracy people, but they are very strong in some ways on ending the occupation and on equal civil rights for Arabs inside Israel, which is a serious civil rights issue as well, also for Ethiopian and African Jewish people as well. There's real racial issues there. Number two, and I'm not in any way excusing, like, look, the project of occupation has absolutely been a broader Israeli one that's cut across the political map. That said, the Israeli right, and even connecting down to their funding sources with people like Sheldon Adelson, and also a broader assault on the Israeli safety net, the Israeli social model, which does exist or did exist. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is not only an ardent sort of, bigot and promoter of quote unquote greater Israel, he's also a prime architect of Israeli austerity and increase in Israeli inequality. So when you track the Israeli far right, you could see Trump coming. You could see the move of this kind of global ethno-state far-right nationalism. And I certainly say it as someone of partial, Jewish background. It is totally depressing to see a state that, of course, was founded in a way that displaced tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of their homes, and was discriminatory and ethno-state focused from the beginning, no doubt. It also, on the other hand, of course, was something that arose from people who were victims of one of the greatest genocides in global history. And it's quite depressing and devastating that a group as historically marginalized, oppressed, and abused as Jews, that we could participate in this kind of politics. But at this point, it just is what it is, and we got to look at it through a proper power lens and not an emotional one. And the final point I want to say is that, Ben Shapiro has gotten a lot of energy. The New York Times said he was, the cool kid's philosopher. There's this notion that this kid is some type of real rigorous thinker.
Cool means something very different than it did when I was in school.
Yes, I guess even if we're being super generous, I'm not getting the cool factor here by any remote stretch of the imagination. But look, so when the Trump administration did this move I'm missing this sheet. I printed it. It was a sheet of a variety of things that Ben Shapiro said about Arabs. It's in the Current Affairs piece by Nathan Robinson. When they announced that Jerusalem would be recognized as the sole capital of Israel, which is a long-term goal of the right here and the right in Israel, it has led to outrage and uprising in the Middle East. It's formally solidified that obviously the United States, which has always been, of course, significantly pro-Israel across all administrations, we are now going to just sort of formally accept that obviously we're not going to be any type of arbiter for a two-state process. Now, the two-state process is absolutely dead, and the Palestinians in the West Bank, which were the only faction left that had an even nominal, or actually really, in fact, quite serious commitment to the 90s process, they're saying what the only obvious response is, which is like, okay, we're going to live under your occupation. We're going to demand full civil voting and equal rights and end to occupation, which of course means that the choice becomes apartheid or full binational democracy for everybody. That's it. And here is Ben Shapiro on Fox News this morning, really just displaying a kind of fear-based, utter lack of any contextual information on the issue, and a kind of like broad, casual bigotry about Palestinians, of which you can pretty much not do with any other group in modern American discourse.
Actually make the announcement. So today, we're going to get it today officially at 1 o'clock. But it will remain a divided city. That won't change. Does that bother you?
Well, I mean, it will remain a divided city because the fact is that the authorities have basically allowed terrorism to spread among the Palestinians, and East Jerusalem has largely been occupied by the same people it's been occupied for the last 7 decades, namely Muslims who live there. That part of the city is very dangerous. It's been very dangerous ever since I can remember, long before I was born. The fact is that when I visited Israel for the first time when I was 16 years old, Israeli soldiers had to guard us as we came out of the tunnels under the Western Wall into East Jerusalem, which, again, the capital of Israel. If you are a Jew and you walk into East Jerusalem, your life is in danger. If you're an Arab and you walk into West Jerusalem, there's no problem at all, which signifies exactly why Jerusalem should be under Jewish control.
Actually, that's totally not true. I'm going to say that several years ago, in an analogous security situation, it has not gotten significantly worse. It's gotten a bit worse. I was in East Jerusalem. I stayed there. I had a lot of falafels. And people were really nice, and absolutely nothing happened.
Is a falafel a type of attack from behind?
It was an attack from a 10-year-old Palestinian kid who was serving me at his dad's restaurant. I needed to be protected by an IDF officer who promptly broke the kid's limbs in front of me so I could feel safe. And then, look, Palestinians are safe in Jewish areas. Inside the occupied West Bank, there are Jewish settler groups that also engage in terrorism, as recognized by the State Department, almost always with IDF soldiers at the very least looking the other way. There's systemic abuses of Palestinian children. There's even a new motion in Congress, finally, by a congresswoman in Minnesota to actually address it. That's how bad it's become. There's different roads inside these territories, and we're not talking about Jerusalem anymore, but back in the occupied territories, which could only be thought of as analogous to the Jim Crow South. And inside greater Israel, inside 67 borders, there has been far-right thug movements that have targeted not only Arab Israelis, but also as I say, people from Jewish backgrounds, but from Ethiopia and broader Africa. And there's pieces of legislation that were being drafted up to target even Israelis that might just be inclined towards being members of a peace movement, as an example. So this is just complete nonsense. And yes, there's soldiers all over the place, and sometimes there are attacks, and that's terrible. There's nothing compared to what happened in the Intifada during Sharon, not even remotely. And in fact, at this point, Hamas barely even engages in these activities anymore itself. What you see mostly recently is kind of like random acts of violent desperation, which, as we always say, are inexcusable and can always be contextualized if we're being serious about understanding the issue. And I just want to say, I mean, look, this is, and Ben Shapiro has obviously their racism is done because Jim Crow is done and black people have bad culture and all the kind of usual tropes that I guess you'd expect from a cool kid philosopher. But I do think that, and I'm not looking for this on my phone, so please bear with me because I lost the sheet, but this really just needs to be said. And this is Nathan Robinson from Current Affairs. And Nathan Robinson makes a very smart point that, Ben Shapiro and a lot of these guys now do the preemptive move, which is like, oh, you're just going to call me racist. You're just going to call me a bigot. Now, yeah, I think sometimes people are definitely on too much of a hair trigger with those words. Even when we're rightly calling something out, we still need to do the legwork. So what Nathan Robinson is doing in this great piece, the quote-unquote cool kids philosopher in current affairs, which I'll tweet out again later. And what I'll do here is we're going to call Ben Shapiro, certainly I consider him absolutely a racist towards Arabs, probably towards black people as well. And it's because when you say things like, Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. That's a racist statement, and I'll explain to you why, if I need to. Because, first of all, you're making a broader innate claim about two broad categories of people, which is demeaning and insane to begin with. Secondly, you're referring to photos of bombed out Arab Palestinian villages where, yes, in fact, people might be living in complete squalor because they don't have access to things like medical care and because white phosphorus has been dropped on Gaza, which has like a population density of Queens. I think that plenty of Palestinians would be quite happy to build if they were given the opportunity. And in fact, the West Bank, even by, Tom Friedman standards and run by not only Palestinians who have not allowed terrorism to flourish under their sort of quasi-semi-autonomous control, which is he claimed before them. The Palestinians in the West Bank have implemented every type of neoliberal economic orthodoxy you could imagine. And of course, it hasn't solved a lot of problems, but it certainly has led to a lot of building things. I've been to Ramallah, and it would shock you how many hotels and cafes and things are in that place, even under in a place of complete non-autonomy and occupation. And then, of course, he's talking about seeing children in Gaza swim in sewage. And Nathan Robinson says it would be like saying, wow, Haitians must really love dying in earthquakes, since a lot of them seem to have done it. And he goes, I am reliably informed that Shapiro is a master of logic, so I'm sure that there's more to this than mere simple-minded prejudice. Back to Robinson. Shapiro's thoughts about Arabs are all along similar lines. Usually conservatives are careful to draw a distinction. They are not condemning an ethnicity, but rather adherence to an ideology. We're very familiar with a lot of people who play that game, namely Islamism. Not so with Shapiro. For him, the only problem is not Islamism or Islam writ large, it's Arabs. The quote, this is back to Shapiro, the Arab-Israeli conflict may be accurately described as a war between darkness and light. Those who argue against Israeli settlement outposts of light in a dark territory argue for the continued victory of night. Arabs value murder, while Israelis value life. Where light fails, darkness engulfs. And those outposts of light are, in many cases, you're talking about ultra right-wing settlers who rip up plants and trees that Palestinian farmers have cultivated for ages. They're talking about people, in some cases, flying in from Brooklyn, throwing rocks at Palestinian children and bulldozing their farms. I guess that's an outpost of light. And of course, Palestinians have engaged in terrorism. And of course, there's many problems inside Palestinian internal politics. This is why we don't make categorical, stupid statements about any group of people otherwise. But we recognize reality, that there's a fundamental asymmetry. And even with, at the times, and it hasn't been this way for quite some time, going back to at least 2002, 2003, when, yes, there really was a drumbeat of Hamas atrocities inside still a broader context of Israeli oppression and occupation. There is no reality-based assessment of that situation that does not recognize the fundamental asymmetry of power there. And the casualness of racism in the discourse here empowers a move that is so reckless that even the Saudis, and they partially have to because of their position, but they've strenuously condemned it, even as the Trump and the royal family have been running interference for each other since the beginning of the administration. What people like John Kerry or Ehud Olmert or Ehud Barak, for that matter, have said about the Israeli situation becoming or being an apartheid state and losing any type of international legitimacy and respect is basic observable reality. And why the New York Times quote-unquote cool kid philosopher would fail to understand that with his Aristotelian logic maybe requires a follow-up piece in the Times. Let's play something nice. In Australia, they finally are catching up, and they have passed marriage equality. And in this clip, a Australian member of parliament, after the vote has been passed, is going to propose to his boyfriend on the floor of parliament in Australia. This happened, I don't have a date, but this happened recently, presumably. Let's take a look.
And with the indulgence of the Speaker, the person I have to thank most is my partner, Ryan. You've had to tolerate more than most because you had to put up with me. Trust me. This debate has been the soundtrack to our relationship. We both know this issue isn't the reason we got involved in politics. Give us tax reform any day. But in my first speech, I defined our bond by the ring that sits on both of our left hands, and that they are the answer to the questions we cannot ask. So there's only one thing left to do. Ryan Patrick Bolger, will you marry me? We'll chuck that in the memoirs and Hansard.
Should let Hansard note to record that that was a yes, a resounding yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, that's beautiful. I actually, this is fucked up where my mind goes, but I'm always so skeptical of public marriage requests. I remember one time, this might not be on YouTube anymore, but a friend of mine showed me. This guy did, and I'm just not look, if a couple literally has a pre-plan, essentially I'm super lame and I want you to propose to me at halftime of a basketball game or in between innings at Yankee Stadium.
Said no woman ever.
Right. If that woman actually said that, and it was literally a pre-plan, okay. But besides that, I'm just get the fuck out of here. It's lame and it's a lot of pressure. This guy showed me one on YouTube, and you're just gonna have to search for it. This is a long time ago. It might not even be. No, you don't have to search for it now. I'm saying people at home. It doesn't matter. But basically, the guy did it in the middle of a basketball game, and the chick just bailed. It was devastating and hilarious.
I actually had a public marriage proposal made to me.
Well, I should remove the foot from my. I doubt it at a sporting event.
No, it was at my birthday party. It was a karaoke party.
Oh, that's different. I think that's different.
It was. I've always had mixed feelings about them, and it was an amazing. it was an amazing moment. I got very verklempt, but we had to have some
really underlining that we're not anti-Semitic, even as we criticize Israel there. I like that. Thank you.
As a Jewish American, I'm entitled to use that kind of language.
Oh yeah.
But we got together and we had some serious conversations afterwards about what it actually meant.
Right.
So if as long as you're willing to do that, because this is something that two people do together theoretically. It's not just this out of the blue.
But one person does have to ask, which is interesting.
Well, they don't necessarily. You can bring it. You can discuss it. You can bring.
If
it
I
up.
ever did such a thing, and it seems like an incredibly dangerous prospect, I would do it in an extremely discreet way. I would probably text it during dinner. I'd be like, check your phone.
Oh my God.
What did you say? We found it?
Oh
no, what were you gonna say? Oh, okay. Gatarone, hi Michael. Right before your show had started, I already called my wonderful representative Ted Yoho, Jesus, and also sent an email which was immediately replied to. That was unusual. It tells me they are listening closely. Everyone call. Yes, everyone call. Flood the zone on this thing. Redbeard, Mike. Will you email those to majorityreporters@gmail.com, please? Redbeard. Email those to majorityreporters@gmail.com. Thank you. Phony Shrimp. I'm ecstatic for Sam. That's going to be awkward contract signing, though. Also, this song is lit like Texas square dancing on top of a bonfire at the Bohemian Grove. Joseph Ballin, get out and protest Verizon stores today. I don't even know what happened. What is the latest horrible thing that they've done? Also on the Jerusalem issue, Trump is just taking the mask off.
That's net neutrality related.
Oh, right. That's another issue we need to really not lose track of.
If you go to a Verizon and disrupt it, take video and send it to us.
Please.
Tweet it at us.
Yes, and we will definitely retweet it. Trump is just taking off the mask of all the horrible shit the U.S. has been doing. Now it's just like an open that we support the apartheid regime. Jonathan Remastered. Michael, please let us in the audience know if we can do anything to help the Cernovich documentary. And one question: what are the odds that it could be named Ether? because today we have shown that the MR crew will not lose ever. You got to give me some Ether beat. I love that. What did he say? That is such a good reference. I love that, I-ammer. The Clutch Nas reference. Yes. But it was the line where he says, will not lose ever. Oh, it's just the instrumental. Oh, that was fine. All right. Actually, probably should definitely not play the actual lyrics of that song. Ernie Sandwiches. Ernie Sandwiches. Sam should play this jam when he returns to NBC and remind them of his alpha status. Read up on crypto. I recommend beginning with Internet of Money before passing judgment on Bitcoin. I will read it. That's something I'm open to learning a lot more about. I'm more curious, though, why Bitcoin. There's ways of designing currencies to favor different types of behaviors and different incentive structures. And my understanding of Bitcoin is that while it is out of the financial system in some ways, it is not, as an example, it's not incentivizing people to spend versus hoard, as an example. Like there's just questions I have that go beyond like it's untraceable techno money, which is interesting. But I mean, if it's just being used to secretly give donations to some fucking Nazi, I'm not interested.
Yeah, there's way too many and I agree I should look into it more, but there's way too many libertarians involved for me to imagine it's not going to go south.
I mean, right. Honestly, it is a big red flag. Preempt tape. Sam needs to pursue legal action. His actions are malicious. Cernovich, take him off the playing field with a lawsuit for interference inside contractual relations, deprive him of any excess assets he might enjoy as a result of his alimony receipts and otherwise. Alex, I mean, whatever it's going to, I mean, I'm just thinking really about the documentary, but victim of your own success. Alex from Fort Worth. Just about all the articles regarding the tax cut that are being shared by conservatives I know are only about the financial benefits for the lower class in 2018. One of the few articles I've seen that shows the general outlines for the next 10 years are at the, the one from PBS, right? Okay. All right. Let me take a few more calls. I cannot promise we will get to all of them. I'm sorry. We have a ton. You're calling from a 973 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, this is Mark from New Jersey.
Yo. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. I told you I was going to call today.
Thanks, Mark.
My first time calling.
Oh, it's good to hear from you, man.
Yeah, I became a member about a year ago, right around the election. I found you guys on YouTube, on TYT, and then you guys popped up in my recommended videos. And I've been listening for about a year, and I love what you guys do. I just wanted to say that when I woke up this morning and I saw your tweet and Matt's tweet about Sam being reinstated, I was very happy about that. I've been pretty active on Twitter, going on with the hashtags that you started and all that stuff.
Awesome.
Bear with me. I get a little nervous when I call into radio shows.
Take your time, man. Don't forget to praise my show, too.
But, of course, you know, I'm a Patreon of TMBS, of course, as you know.
There he is.
And
there you go. Now you can relax. Now you can just take your full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for all the tweeting.
To hit on. Yeah, no doubt. I appreciate everything you guys do. I mean,
thank everybody.
I literally listen live every day from 12 to 2, and I listen to the TMBS show every Tuesday. It helps me keep my sanity with everything that's going on lately in the world.
Awesome.
I'm kind of a new father. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Congratulations.
So I actually started caring about this stuff recently. You know, up until a few years ago, I really didn't care about politics and all that. And a couple of things I wanted to hit on. I'll make it quick. I know you said you got a lot of calls.
Yeah, no, go ahead, man.
One, now that Franken has resigned, I wonder if Democrats are actually going to stand up and say, well, look, we cleaned up our side. When are you guys going to clean up your side? Because if Franken is going to resign, then I feel like Trump should resign and Roy Moore shouldn't be running.
Dude,
it should work both ways.
I had a lot. It's never going to, because they don't care about this stuff. And I'm not even saying that, you know, obviously there's enormous Democratic blind stuff on this stuff. But I was very, especially in Franken's case, if I'm being blunt. And, you know, Conyers actually said, I'll resign when Trump resigns. But to me, like, the accusations against Conyers were serious enough that it's like, you kind of just... Now, and I'm not in any way like, Franken's fucked up, whatever, of course. But
yeah,
I think Franken could have played that
Franken
game.
did it, yeah.
I think he could have played that game.
Definitely.
But it was time for... But, you know, the reality is it's not going to be... Now it's time for you guys to clean up. The reality is going to be like... this guy resigned for, like, you know, groping. You guys are endorsing pedophiling. That's the message.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. And I see all the time on cable news and people kind of conflating what Franken did or what Franken's been accused of with what Roy Moore's been accused of.
Well, this is what I was trying to say
things.
before. We need to make these distinctions, not to minimize or justify any behavior, but the fact that they all come in a cluster as the same thing is a serious, like, it's politically wrong, it's intellectually wrong. I mean, again, including, frankly, the Conyers stuff. And that one, to be honest, speaking personally for me, was the hardest. I mean, I've always really admired John Conyers. And what he was accused of was extremely serious. Like, extortion, you know, I mean, could not get more serious. And that is different than what Franken is accused of. And that is, you know, radically different than the whole Matt Taibbi thing, right? Like, we can... Part of how we're going to be able to have a conversation about all of these things that's smart and levels critique is by never equating and putting all this on the same playing field. It could be on a continuum, but people need to be smart to talk about continuums. And a lot of people haven't been.
Yeah. Definitely. I totally agree 100%. And I think that it's totally wrong when you have them sitting here going, oh, well, you know, Franken should resign, Franken should resign, Franken should resign, all the Democrats, but none of the Republicans have said a word. I mean, some of them did, but now they're all backtracking, and now the RNC supporting Roy Moore again.
That's who they are.
And it's just wrong. And the way that they, you know, kind of make it seem like, for the fact that Corey Lewandowski can go on TV and call Franken a pig call Franken a pig while they're supporting Roy Moore.
And Donald Trump.
But
this is fascism.
Let's never. This is fascism. Exactly. None of it means anything to them. So the only lesson from this is to just be clear about who they are. That's it.
And who we are, which I think includes Franken resigning.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Franken should have resigned. And I think Conyers should have resigned. As much as I agree with their politics, I think that they both, you know, are doing the right thing by stepping down. But it's just the double standard is ridiculous. And then the other
double standard's always going to exist.
Really quick.
I mean, I agree that maybe
the other thing I really want to say.
Go on.
Yeah.
Really, really quick is about you know, people always call in and ask about Republicans and how can we help convert Republicans and how do we talk to Republicans, and I think that we shouldn't, and we shouldn't even really try. If they're set in their ideas, you're not going to talk them out of feeling these crazy things that they feel. And I think that when you look at how many people vote in this country, that the majority of the people that are not engaged and are not voting and don't care about politics like me a few years ago, if they got into politics and they did become engaged, would lean the way that we lean. I just really feel that way. And that we have a better chance of getting people who are not involved than we do turning people from Republican to Democrat.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that the smaller than people think subsection of Trump voters who come from the working class do deserve some empathy and discussion. And if they want to turn from right populist to left populist, that's great. But I do agree that the larger mass of non-voting, non-engaged people are our first priority.
And I think they'll get hit with the same message. I mean, that's the thing that I've never bought this argument, because I think, like, yes, of course I want it, to the extent there was anybody who voted for Obama twice, or, you know, was genuinely conned by Trump and is concerned about these issues and is at a point of desperation, of course I want those people's votes. And not only do I want their votes, I want to deliver for them. But the same message that would appeal to them, if that concern was genuine, about corporate power, about healthcare, about corruption, then that's it. Doesn't require anything. Like, the same message that is going to appeal to them is the same message of a broader, wider, rising left electorate that needs universal healthcare, that needs to reclaim wealth, that needs free college, that needs, you know, universal broadband access, net neutrality, clean energy, and doesn't want to escalate and kill people overseas to maintain a reckless empire. So there's no contradiction between any of those three things.
Right. It's like what they say with the polling. When you poll people on the specific issues, most of the time, you know, 60% or better agree with, say, Bernie Sanders' position. They are for universal health care, or they're for, you know, universal education, or they're, you know, for $15 an hour minimum wage. But then they hear the word socialist and they don't want to vote for Bernie. It's, you know, those
that's changing with the younger people. That's my job. Yeah. I'm going to keep detoxifying that. Thanks for the call, brother.
Thank you, Mike.
Bye. You're calling from a 519 area code. Where are you calling from? 519, are you there? Going once. I didn't even do it going twice. You're calling from a 631 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael. It's Tim from New Paltz. How you guys doing?
Hey, man. What's going on?
Okay, real quick, because I know you guys are running late. I just wanted to say, if you're in a blue state and you have a Republican representative in the House, those guys are scared about this tax bill, and you can put a lot of pressure on them. I live in New York District 19. We have the despicable John Faso as our representative, who's a Mercer puppet freak. Horrible guy, but he voted against this tax bill because he got so much backlash after voting for the health care bill. He just drowned in public comments, and they put the fear of God in him. And now he's worried because there's Fire Faso signs even in like Trump districts. So it's not going well for those guys, and you can exert a lot of pressure on them. And
that's guys. If you live in California or New York, especially, I don't know where else, maybe Pennsylvania, but definitely California, New Jersey, California, Illinois. New York. What do you say? Illinois. I mean, these guys, it's not only that they're vulnerable, it's that they're literally voting for, like, there's the class dimensions of that this is a middle class, you know, and poor tax increase to subsidize giveaways to the rich. That is a bigger picture, but there's also a major state dimension to this. I mean, this is, if you live in California, I mean, there's a reason. Look, Jerry Brown said, like, I think he said this is mafia tactics, and that it's, you know, and it's if you live in California or New York, you can just straight like, you're voting to increase my taxes, period.
Yeah, and you'd be right.
And you'd be absolutely right. And you're also interfering with our ability to set our own budget. And I will do, you're never even going to, like, not only you're never going to get my vote again, I'm going to go to every rally, I'm going to knock on every door for your opponent, period.
Yeah, it's mobilized people here a lot. And one more quick thing. How are any of these right-wing hucksters even alive? Donald Trump eats 4 McDonald's sandwiches a day, and Mike Cernovich is living entirely off of like fake nootropics that he makes in his fucking bathtub. Like, I don't even understand. He's at the point now where he's pretending he's not gonna become a nootropics salesman, but every one of his fucking streams ends with him popping a bunch of blue pills and saying, "You guys can't handle these nootropics. They make me too mindful. My mindfulness is off the charts, and you'll never be able to do it. Only for me. It's for me only because I have the gorilla mindset." He's a fucking joke. I hope you guys eviscerate him.
I would definitely say "for me only" should be a tagline for a lot of Mike Cernovich things.
Oh, God. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right, have a good one.
You too. All right. You are calling from a 814 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Michael. Matthew.
Hello.
Good to talk to you. Emma here.
Yes. Right-wing Mandela here.
Hey, good to talk to you. It's very evident that with the resignation of Al Franken today, that the Democrats have demonstrated that they are willing to build a citadel on this perceived moral high ground, as they've been bypassed by the blitzkrieg of today's panzer politics. And I'd like to tip my hat to the MR crew, and I'd like to take this point right here to say my condolences to Jamie and her husband for the recent loss. I truly mean this.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say hello to the mysterious twins, Brendan and Patrick. Very shrewd of the MR team to hire twins to confuse their enemy.
Right.
I'd like to tip my hat to Sam and the rest of you for winning a battle against the blitzkrieg of belligerent bellicosity that has been directed toward you. Unlike the Democrats, you are attempting to use cynicism, satire, and sarcasm to use as a weapon, much like the French did in World War II to disrupt communications. So I tip my hat to you guys. You are worthy adversaries and deserve recognition for your recent victory. This is MR here, signing off in the struggle to save Western civilization.
Yeah, actually.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know what? It's funny. It's like getting to the point where it's like there's a part where it's like it actually is true. It's like we need to save free speech, Western civilization, liberal democracy, and you fucking troglodytes who are constantly talking about it are the ones that are destroying it.
Well, let's look at the regular theme of fascism, of accusing the other side of doing what you intend to do yourself.
Right. It's literally just the constant politics of projection by troubled, horrible people who are useful for incredibly rich, greedy people. That's always all it amounts to. Let's do the last piece of sound for the hell of it. I haven't had much to say about Al Franken. I totally thought in the beginning that it was fine to have an ethics process. I did not support him resigning. At this point, there's just enough of a drumbeat where it's definitely right that he goes, and obviously his behavior is totally unacceptable. What's interesting about Fox, and I don't think Newt Gingrich has actually ever been accused of harassment. He's just been sort of noted to be a scumbag. And, I think if anything, what this should do is there's probably some people, somehow Newt Gingrich gets to serve divorce papers to a wife of his that he's cheating on who has cancer, and he's still all over the place. John Edwards is totally run out of public life. I don't exactly get how that works. I think Anthony Weiner, pre-teenager, okay, how on earth that guy's career is destroyed for dumb behavior on, I'm not even going to say, you know what, weird behavior on Twitter. If that's your thing, whatever. As long as it's, you know what, when he did that with consenting adults, how this is even an issue in today's world is kind of beyond me. But the point is that there's obviously a lot of hypocrisy to go around on all of these issues. But Newt Gingrich and Laura Ingraham are apparently so, and I'm guessing this is probably going to still amount to some indirect concern about Roy Moore, who is a almost certain fucking pedophile. They're going to contextualize this issue in an interesting way, and they're basically going to kind of defend Al Franken because at a certain point, you know, you got to pick your hell to stand on. Obviously, it should be for groping. Here is Laura Ingraham and Newt Gingrich.
First of all, I'm going to be very politically incorrect. Let's go back to who Al Franken was a month ago. He had the #1 best-selling book. He was a very funny guy. Democrats loved him. He was doing fine. And then things began to fall apart. Now, all of these nice people, none of whom have given back the money that they raised from Harvey Weinstein. None of whom Weinstein. None of whom have repudiated Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. None of whom seemed offended in the past. Suddenly, in a paroxysm of moral outrage, create a lynch mob. And what you saw today was a lynch mob. Let's not have due process. Let's not ask anybody any questions. Let's not have any chance to have a hearing. Let's just lynch him. Because when we get done lynching him, we'll be so pure. We'll feel so good. This is a party which is losing its mind. I think, I'm being very politically incorrect, but let me just be clear. I think that the Gillibrands and others are literally losing their minds. I think that Elizabeth Warren is losing her mind. I think they're in this moment of existential enthusiasm, which in the middle of the Middle Ages we call flagellante. People would walk around, they'd beat themselves. They would beat themselves. They'd say, "Oh, I feel so much better now. I'm beating myself. Look how bad I am." These are people who grew up in a party which used to preach free love, which used to think that all of the hippiedom was wonderful, who used to think they somehow represent the future, and now they've suddenly curdled into this weird puritanism which feels a compulsion to go out and lynch people without a trial.
Okay, let me work this backwards.
First of all, I'm going to be very politically incorrect.
That's my first point. Let me work this backwards. Okay. It's amazing how Republicans equate sexual freedom with sexual assault and harassment. Now, like, there is no doubt that were people raped and assaulted in cultures that identified themselves as being part of free love? Absolutely. People, women have been, and men, in fact, have been raped and assaulted in every culture that has identified itself as sexual anything, because it's a question of violence, domination, and abuse. That is a separate track. In fact, I would argue that, broadly speaking, cultures that have open access to sex and more freedom with regards to that actually breed less suppression and therefore less abuse. And of course, there's no surprise to me that whether it's, Roy Moore or a story you read from Saudi Arabia, like, that's where some of the real sick shit goes down with real repressed people. Republicans seem to not get the difference between, like, hey man, I want to fuck a lot of people at Woodstock, with I'm going to, like, grab a woman's breast in a photo because for some, I don't know, depressed middle-aged reason. So that's number one. Number two, I don't think that women who, by the way, when we look at the numbers of the just the astronomical amounts of money that has been allocated to settle sexual harassment claims inside Congress itself, is a sign of women losing their minds. It's actually just a sign of, finally, there's an opportunity to actually do something about a structural issue that has affected employment, safety, and everything else. Number three, I don't actually disagree with him in general about the process question. I was totally for Franken staying there for an ethics process. My reason I think that he should resign now is honestly just more mercenary and practical. And so I guess my disagreement there is just one of me being more cynical than Newt Gingrich.
Yeah, I agree. I believe the accusations. Yeah. I think they seem very credible to me, but I also think you could have gone through the ethics committee.
And I think starting with the beginning with not disputing her charges, but the fact that yes, you do have to take into account that the tweet-in is associated with Sean Hannity. You do have to take into account how that was dripped out. That's a political question, and it doesn't. By the way, still, what she said could absolutely be true and still totally wrong. There's no contradiction between both of those positions. But the reason he has to go now is a political calculation. And to the, what was the top point? Oh, yeah, the Republican Party has utterly lost its mind. And I wish that if the Democrats have lost their mind because they're being puritanical and self-flagellating because they don't want a almost certain groper in their caucus, I would really appreciate if, this is the first time I'll ever say this, can the Republicans lose their mind too? And then maybe you won't feel good about having the president who was accused of raping his wife. Read that description. It's one of the most disturbing things you'll ever read.
Awful.
It's grotesque. A guy who's almost certainly a fucking pedophile go into the Senate. If it takes being crazy to be upset about that sort of thing, then please get crazy. Thank you. We're going to take a final call. I'm so sorry. I'm sure Sam will get to everybody tomorrow, and then a few more IMs, and then we do have to go. You're calling from a 303 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? Hey, you're there. 303? Yep. All right. You're calling from a 917 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hey, this is the pastry plate, Sam's favorite, compatriot on Up with Chris Hayes, Up with Steve Kornacki.
Oh, the pastry plate. Right. Sam would always, on Chris's weekend show, there would always be pastries there, and the other guests would feel nervous about eating on television. Sam did not.
Well, in fact, he had a fantastic strategy. He would just kind of munch the whole time. He would just do it as a machine, just shovel the pastry in until the camera just couldn't ignore it. That was fantastic. Four times, yes. He was my favorite. Well, don't tell anybody else that. Unless anybody else listens to the show, then don't know that. Oh, hell, I already blew that. Anyway, just want to congratulate Sam for beating the man, I guess, and getting back on the stage that he rightly deserves. When is his next hit on MSNBC?
That I don't know.
Well, we'll watch for him.
All right.
Anyway, I know how it feels to be unceremoniously dumped off a show that you work your heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears into. And you know what? Just props to him. I just wanted to call in and say, yay, Sam.
Thanks, man. Appreciate the call.
All right.
All right.
Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. Binder Dad, Greg Jarrett did nothing wrong at the Minneapolis airport. The DX Fool, Holy Sandinistas. Randy Rhodes was complaining on her podcast about not being invited to all those Air America events like company parties where she could have witnessed Franken kissing, groping women without their permission. Perhaps you folks could have Franken's old radio partner, Catherine Lamfer, in studio to discuss. I mean, I don't even know if she's in New York. I don't exactly even know who she is, but we'll see. I mean, I to be blunt with you, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, I know especially for Sam, like, this is not like a happy story. This is not something like we super want. Like, we have to talk about it because it's relevant to politics and is relevant to a broader, cultural moment, which hopefully will be a reverse and fight against a culture of systemic sexual assault of every variety. But there isn't like a big appetite here to get into the weeds of like it sucks.
Of a former senator.
Yeah, and I say this like I'm not saying it like honestly, like Al Franken was I was not as excited about Al Franken as other people were. I have different politics than Al Franken, and I whatever. But I mean, look, the guy was a funny satirist. He's got some good liberal politics. He and he also actually started doing some of this type of work, like just like Howard Stern in some ways is the godfather of anybody who does any type of a certain kind of talk. Al Franken is, along with Jon Stewart, I mean, even stuff that is well to the left and way more interesting, I would argue in some ways, like when they wrote books about Fox News and when he wrote books about Fox and Rush Limbaugh, I mean, no one else is doing that. And, I'm not like, it sucks. It's not like something I don't think, and I doubt Sam really wants to like get into the minutia of this stuff, we just cover it as it comes. I think it's a fucking bummer story. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say something.
If anything, I think regardless of why he was forced to face this stuff, I'm sort of coming around to the belief that a former abuser who has been forced to reckon with it and actually changed his attitudes and behavior could be an asset to the left because they know how this stuff works.
Right.
And you kind of need them. We might need that model for society too.
I think we're gonna. Well,
how
I
you
think
can gracefully go from being a fucking creep to like, I was a creep.
Well, I also like. I understand. Look, obviously, there's all sorts of types of abuse in the society, and we're seeing it every day in these stories that don't get addressed and aren't dealt with. And so, of course, but I keep making it like my ultimate goal. Like, I want the prison population reduced by, I don't know, 90%, if I had to guess. Like, I'm a person who believes in rehabilitation. Like, I think people should be in prison or like totally socially shunned and sanctioned if they are literally such a threat to other people's well-being that there's no other way of managing them, right? But in general, I mean, that's not my goal of how I look upon things. So I think there totally has to be a path of rehabilitation in every sector of society, and that's what we should be advocating for on, at least my view, the left. Left is best. Love the show. You've helped me a lot over the last year. Just became a member and also donated to your GoFundMe. Jamie, you rock. Keep up the good work, guys. All right. Sorry, guys. Wait. This might be funny. Okay. Okay. Greg. Sam, I just wanted to express my indignation at MSNBC fiasco. Sam seems pretty crazy that they took Cernovich's word for it. If it makes you feel better, I have never watched InfoWars or MSNBC except for a few YouTube clips where you're there, and only for your show with its called Libertarians caught my attention with its quirky progressive host and sarcastic sense of humor. I have been calling in ever since. You see the way that the I am is taking a turn? And since I know what you're thinking, Michael's got serious issues. I am thinking that too. But this I am is not about Michael. It is about the spinelessness of MSNBC for firing you over the tweet without context. Keep trucking my MR beauties and Tealkilla. P.S.
Greg, call.
I'll just leave it at that. He also was claiming that he knew that I would be triggered into a Thiel voice. But Greg, Peter Thiel would not have appeared without your diversion. So again, look upon yourself, young libertarian grasshopper. Wish you guys did the Virginia poll we did for the Alabama so we could seem more sure about this. General Periwinkle. All right, guys, this is going to need to be the last I am. And I'm just picking at random here. Fuck, man. There's so many I'm missing. I apologize. Okay. Social Jewish warrior. Doug Jones is no John Ossoff. He has a history of prosecuting Klansmen, alone making him more progressive on social justice issues. If you're in Alabama, please get out and vote. I agree completely. Sam is back tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. Thank you.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in.